Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a Sunday morning Murder Church, episode 80 of Phil Spector here. We're still plowing away. We're going to be starting out with the judge and counsel discuss the trial proceedings outside the presence of the jury. Got 30 minutes starting there, and then we're continuing into Dr. Bodden's testimony. He is still not done. We've been with him for many weeks, and maybe many more weeks. Who knows? Come on in, hit the like. Share it on X, share it in any Discords, any social media. That could really help me out. I appreciate it. Hit the old like ski. Let's hang out for a little while.
Let's rock.
Let's rock. Al Bundy style. What's up, everybody? Welcome in here. Get this right here so I can look at the chat myself. Wearing a Toxic Avenger shirt also. What we got in here? Hey, Kathy, good morning. Pammy, Debbie Blair, Semi Sharp, Factual Lie, Wildside, Micah, Leia. Hell yeah, welcome in, Semi. Good morning, my fine people. Buzz Nation coming through on a Sunday morning. I appreciate it. Donnie Not Wahlberg hanging out. Still looking through here. Bassett Page, good morning. Bassett Page going through the book club lives and playing a little bit of catch up on the notes from the stranger beside me. Tina, good morning. Yeah, let me hit the bell. Start this out right. Let's start this out with some bells properly. How about that? Motion to Scream, good morning. I said, Pammy, good morning. Everybody, good morning. Praise be. Looking in here right now. Yeah, everybody, thank y'all so much for coming in and hanging out this morning. Like I said, episode 80 of Phil Spector, believe it or not. I don't know if I believe it, but we're still trucking along. I think this is video 200 right here. So we finally broke into the 200s, and we're just going to keep on doing our thing. We're going to be doing this. Like I said, I predict the end of August. So I feel like we're going to go through summer with Phil Spector, but yeah, before we get to a new trial, it's been something. It has been something for sure. Everybody coming in, thank you very much. A couple of new things we got going on. I do got some coasters coming as well, so do not fret. Those are going to be sweet. I got like 50 of those bad boys coming, so those will be cool to have for the wheel. We still got a wheel rocking and rolling. I think we got 2 names on the current wheel. So anybody that does come through, this is one of the cool things that we have going on right now. I got the sticker pack that's got a Dandy Savage sticker in there, a Partner in Crime sticker in there, and I think a Murder Church sticker in there as well. These will be on the wheel today, this morning, if we get a spin. And I'll be keeping an eye on everything, whether that's, let me pop this guy up here just so everybody can see it. Up above there, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, all of those are wide open. I'm pretty sure all of those are still accessible. I know Cash App and Venmo, I still get those regularly. Publicly buzzed on those. Those are friend to friend and come directly to me, and I always appreciate those. But anybody that comes through here on YouTube as well, whether you become a member, which will get you inside of the book club right here, join us is what I'm asking. Every Tuesday night after Murder Church, we get together and we discuss The Stranger Beside Me. We're on chapters 20, I think we're on 22 and 23 if I'm not mistaken. So we're trucking our way through this book, and every Tuesday I read detailed notes and then talk to the chat about the book club, about what we're doing. But also, if you give a super, that will get you on the wheel as well, and we will get you going. Yeah. I'm kind of playing around with the idea of doing something a little bit different on Friday nights. Well, of course, we would still have a will active. If anybody, I don't even know, because I'm thinking about maybe changing up on Friday nights. I need to cross all the T's and dot the I's before maybe even talking about it. But maybe on Friday nights, when we do Feral Friday, when we have a little bit of fun, maybe make the will into something as if, if we fill the will up, or maybe put different bad things on the wheel that we could spin if we reach a certain level, maybe shots. I don't know. I need to brainstorm that idea a little bit more. I know a few other people do, in particular the Nick Stravos guy, that lawyer. He does one called the Wheel of Regrets, and I think it's a shot thing there, but I think that could go with Publicly Buzzed a little well, but kind kind of play with the idea. I don't know. I'm messing around with ideas. Always trying to figure out something. But everyone, thank y'all so much for getting in here. I really appreciate it. Ooh, anybody else creeping in the door here? Anybody else creeping in the door? Jen D said, what's up? She just busted open the door. What? She said, what is going on?
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
Hang and bang.
Coming to hang and bang, baby.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Love it, love it. But yeah, let's jump in here without further ado. Thank you all so much for hanging out. And let's see what Judge Dowhard's doing this morning. He's already ready to rock and roll. That's what he's ready to do. Everyone that hung out on Friday night with me and Lisa and watched Frankenhooker, I hope you had a good time. That is one of my favorite films of ever. I love that film so much. But yeah, let's get in here. And a couple of cool plugs. Well, I've got some folks in here. I've got some cool things coming down the pike this month. I've got another show already planned out with Jack from Never a Truer Word. We're going to do a Ted Bundy. He's actually going to analyze Ted Bundy's last ever interview, which I have watched on here live before, about a year and a half ago, if not longer. And that's a really intriguing and interesting interview. Bundy really starts to talk about things that he had never talked about before. He gets into the porn thing. This is hours before he is executed. And we're going to get some insight into the brain of Ted Bundy through Jack, which I'm extremely excited about. And then next Friday, I've got Mo coming in here. She is returning to come and hang out. And we're going to be watching something. I'm not exactly sure yet what, but keep your ears on for that. And then we've got some things coming down the pike. Just keep your mind on that. But one thing I need to do is pull up a little fill. Boom! A little fill action here. Let's go, guys.
Counsel, the district attorneys are present.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Before
That's how
we
we start
begin,
this out.
I take
Judge
it you're ready to
Dowhard,
proceed,
best judge
Mr.
of all
Brunon.
time.
Yes, sir.
I just want
Fight
to
me
note
about
something. It's been brought to my
That's the
attention, and it's now been verified by some of the jurors. There are people seated. They're seated next to Mr. Dunn, who keeps commenting on the evidence as it develops, and the jurors have heard you. Other people have heard you.
There's an
If it
idea,
happens
CH.
again,
Welcome
those
in here, brother.
individuals are out of the courtroom forever. It's that simple. And you know who I'm talking to you, ma'am.
Understand.
Okay? It's real simple. All right.
She's probably looking around like, who could it be? And he's like, oh, she's like,
Thank you. Mr. Brunon, you wanted to be heard as to the discovery issue?
I did, Your Honor.
Okay.
As I understand the issue, we're talking about the new theory or
Gary,
explanation that Dr. Bodden and Mr. Ford came up with Sunday to explain the apparently inconsistent facts of the blood deep in the lungs and completely severed.
That's sort of the impetus to get this whole
Factual Lie, Micah, Lexi the Law Nerd. Thank you all so much for those
way
shares.
she started, right?
Next.
But are we talking about information other than that?
Well, we're talking about how it fits into a pattern, and the pattern is that started with this missing box of evidence that was, I can't remember whether it was in Mr. Blazer's office or Ms. Kenny Bodden sort of took responsibility for it.
Mr. Blazer had this.
And I think I sort of overlooked it the first time. It was the first one I can't remember. It's been so many months. I think I said, okay, these things happen. That's fine. And things do happen, and I understand that. And then all of a sudden, and I understand you are not responsible for the Henry Lee thing, and the court's made its findings. You were not the attorneys at the time, but the bottom line is I found a discovery violation on that. And now we have, in essence, what is the third discovery violation.
Well,
and maybe more, I will indicate, based on Dr. Bodden's testimony about giving reports to the defense and those reports orally and never being turned over to the prosecution.
Well, that's why I kind of wanted to get kind of a baseline
Now, that
there on
hasn't
this.
been raised by the prosecution yet.
Well,
And I don't, if they think there's been a violation, they'll let me know.
Well, I'm sure that there were conversations between their experts that don't get memorialized. The nature of conversation is ongoing, and some of them are completely de minimis. Most of them are the type of thing as, well, what do you mean by this? And, they're kind of filling in the blanks. So we're talking about the delay between Monday morning when the first communication could have been made, and Tuesday when the information was revealed, and a box of paper priors that was revealed 4 months before the trial. So, I mean, basically that's what
They
we're
start
talking
out a
about.
morning.
As far as I know.
All right. Insofar as the information about the new theory, I think it's important for us to distinguish between things that might be factual in their nature. For example, a new slide that was developed, or a new test, something that is more concrete and more factual in nature, as opposed to something that is hypothetical or explanatory, kind of a this is what may have happened information. And after looking at the cases, I haven't found a California case that deals with this kind of narrow issue, an expert's amplification of an earlier opinion. But there are numerous federal cases that deal with it, and all of those cases stand for the proposition that it is simply not necessary to reveal all of those communications. And one of the leading cases is a Bowersfield versus Suzuki Motor Company.
Oh, there we go. Wildside, welcome back in here. Hell yeah.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Thank you, Wildside. Wildside getting on this thing. She wants some stickers. Dude, I want that Dandy Savage sticker. That thing is hot off the press. And then, yeah, thank you, Wildside. Appreciate that. Wildside's been a G around here for quite some time. Let's just not beat around the bush. Thank you so much. I love you.
And it holds that the testimony of an expert on matters within the expert's expertise, but outside of the expert's report, is not only permissible at trial, but the exclusion of such testimony may be reversible error. So, and as we discussed when this issue first came up, kind of unanticipated on Monday, the cases out of the federal system that deal with this more frequently treat it as a non-issue. I mean, it's kind of in the nature of the beast. And as a due process component there, or a confrontation clause component, it doesn't, the experts don't even have to prepare a report for federal system. Now, I understand that we have a more narrow statutory scheme, but this type of failure to disclose has not, as far as I can tell, been treated as a discovery violation in California up to this date. I took a look at the cases the court cited, and the Lamb case is kind of in the area where, in that case, the defense lawyer refused to have his expert prepare a report, refused to produce records, refused to orally communicate what the expert's conclusion was, and simply stonewalled it. The court in that case, the trial court.
Why does my gummies disappear when I pop them in chat? There we go. The new emoji, a little bit of gummy action in there for anybody that knows they know.
Allowed the expert and his associate to fully discuss the expert's opinion. And the Court of Appeal said that that was appropriate in that case. Also, the court refused to allow the same expert to come back on surrebuttal after the prosecution had introduced evidence contradictory to the unrevealed report. And the court said because of the delay involved under 352 and because of the flat refusal to disclose any of the expert's report, we're going to exclude that on surrebuttal. The Court of Appeal said that was appropriate. Now, the other case the court cited held it was error to exclude testimony concerning an alleged partnership agreement. This is a flat error. That's just not the appropriate remedy under the circumstances. So, in terms of whether or not it's a violation at all, I think that there is some question. But moving to the next component, or at least another component, whether or not there was prejudice. At this point, the prosecution hasn't said how they were prejudiced by the delay from Monday to Tuesday, the one-day delay in learning of this information. We haven't heard how, if they'd heard it Monday, they would have been able to do something that they weren't able to do because they heard it Tuesday. And prejudice, obviously, is a component in this. If there's no prejudice, there's no violation. So I think we need to have some amplification on that particular point. And coming down to the final, what are we going to do about it? 1054.5 says that exclusion, which the court is talking about, is the extreme remedy.
I mentioned exclusion is one of the remedies that is mentioned in the case law. I never said I was excluding anything.
Okay, well, okay.
Has yet to have been decided.
Well, then I misunderstood. I thought it was on the table.
Well, it's on the table in the sense that that is a possible remedy. I have never indicated that that was the appropriate remedy. It's something that people no doubt will ask for, and I'm prepared to deal with it.
All right, well, just briefly on that point, that's the extreme remedy. It's cases essentially disfavor that remedy, but the statute and the cases interpreting 1054.5 say the court must try every other remedy short of that before that. And thus far, we haven't tried any remedy because we don't know what the prejudice is, so we don't know how to resolve any potential prejudice.
And I think I mentioned that. I don't know if you were in the courtroom, but that is the last and final and most extreme remedy. And I mentioned to the people before I decided, I have been asked at the bench
Seeking justice
to
with
go
the
ahead
share. Thank you, guys.
and make a decision, and I've indicated until the people sort of finish deciding what they're going to present to me, I'm not in a position to make that.
So to an extent, this may be a little bit premature, but I think establishing the principles so we all know what we're looking at and how we try to address it is important. But as I sat and listened to the testimony yesterday, it seemed to me that the prosecution's cross-examination may have mooted out most of the issue. Mr. Jackson said before beginning the hearing yesterday that he was going to only address the when and the where, kind of the surrounding facts of this new theory. So we assumed that that's what would happen. But during the course of the examination, the actual theory itself was questioned about. What is your explanation about Dr. Bodden again said that in trying to reconcile these seemingly inconsistent facts, it occurred to him that there may have only been partial transection and that this would not have been unheard of in the forensic realm because he was familiar with instances where the neck wasn't stabilized and a partial transection became a complete transection during transportation. So, it was, as we've referred to, as an aha moment. And the prosecution examined him about that, examined him about the nature of his theory, examined him about, well, when did you first come up with it? How did you first come up with it? What kind of a numbskull wouldn't have thought of that years or months before? And kind of examined the entire area. So I'm thinking, what's left here? It's been challenged by the fact it's not in his report. It hasn't previously been discussed with any of the other experts. It's like something that just showed up at the last minute and therefore may not have that much weight behind it. So to me, it seems like it had been resolved by cross-examination, but certainly it's been challenged and reiterated before the jury by the prosecution's own initiative. So again, we come down, what are we going to do about it? And until we know the prejudice, until we know what steps can be used to deal with it.
Flashing some murder kitties. That's what I'm talking about. Meowder church kitties. Let's go.
I think that talking about finding some prejudice and finding some sanction is premature.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just prosecution, Mr. Ward?
Just briefly, Your Honor, Mr. Jackson hasn't finished his cross-examination. Just first, a couple preliminary matters. It always sounds like Mr. Brunon's coming across with this kind of just get over it theory of discovery violations. But as the court pointed out, this is the third one in the row. And I'd just like to first just briefly compare and contrast how the information that they get from our experts compared to what we get. I mean, we had this 2.5-page report that doesn't include the aha moment in it. They have received from our experts thousands of pages of discovery reports, bench notes, rough drafts of reports, test results, photographs, emails. They know that. I mean, we can cart it in little trucks, hand trucks, to show how much stuff they've gotten. We are asking the court to consider the striking of the testimony remedy, but there are a couple others, as the court pointed out, a pinpoint instruction that we can all address at the appropriate time. And kind of following the Lamb case that the court mentioned, we think that the defense should be limited on their ability to redirect Dr. Bodden on this issue, on the new AHA theory, in a way to rehabilitate him after the cross-examination. Mr. Brunon, I think, is wrong when he says that Mr. Jackson mooted this all. Mr. Jackson's questions were directed, as he indicated to the court they would be, surrounding when, how, why did you come to this at this last moment, that sort of thing.
More insulting.
That and Dr. Bodden's answers went way beyond, in our view, direct answers to Mr. Jackson's questions. And
we're still not done with Dr. Bodden, guys. We still have, I don't even know what's coming.
Tried to explain his views and his rationale behind the science. Mr. Brunon said, well, Mr. Jackson kind of mooted this. You know, what else could he have done? We could have done a lot. We all know how Mr. Jackson prepares for this, and I think he would have been much more prepared on the science, the weight of the lungs, looking at maybe the photographs of the autopsies with respect to the spinal cord and whether or not it was transected, talked to some experts and the like on this, even if we'd known on Sunday about this, which is, I have to say, I have doubts whether that's when the aha moment happened, but if it did, even on Sunday, that happened. And in today's world of email and voicemail and all that, it would have been very easy to do. Mr. Rosen knows that I talked to Deborah Robitaille and came up with a new bit of information, and I emailed him within a day or so. He's got the email, and I said, hey, I talked to this witness, basically the same except for this. I want you to know. They could have done that. Mr. Plord could have done that, and he didn't, and he did it in an effort to surprise us, take advantage of this situation. That's exactly what he did. And we think that there should be some remedies to this. And one or more of the ones that I suggested perhaps are the correct ones, and including perhaps not allowing Warner Spitz to come in and back this up at the last second.
I think Spitz comes back also.
We would also ask the court to preclude that, or at least consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
God, this trial's ridiculous.
Mr. Brunon, did you wish to reply?
That hasn't filled in the factual blanks very much. Just in regard to the factual assertions that Dr. Bodden answered beyond the scope of the questions, the court had before it several objections, or at least some objections by Mr. Jackson that the answer exceeded the question. The court ruled that it didn't. The court ruled that Dr. Bodden's answers were appropriate. So that you've already ruled on that. And without additional specificity, it's kind of hard to say, well, where was the court wrong in ruling on those beyond the scope objections? In terms of perhaps he could have talked to experts, perhaps he could have looked more closely at the facts surrounding the weight of the lungs, perhaps he could have looked at the slides. Well, perhaps he can still do that. He could have done it Tuesday, could have done it Wednesday, could do it today, could do it tomorrow. That's 3 days over the weekend. No one has been precluded from doing that. And to posit these high...
Oh, man, Kathy coming through being awesome. Says, please put Bassett Page on the will in place of in honor of her orange kitty that is no longer with us, if I remember correctly. So first of all, Bassett Page, that's terrible. I love an orange kitty, first of all. But yeah, also super awesome and nice of Kathy to get you on the wheel. So let me get you on here real quick. Kathy, thank you so much for being amazing, per the usual. Love it. Let me give you a little love.
Hold up! Hold up! Hold up!
Thank you so much for that file spot through the Venmo machine, Kathy. Really appreciate that. Boom, we are moving up to 4 names on this thing now. for the first sticker pack.
Hypothetical things that we might have done but we haven't done begs the question, well, why haven't you done it? Are you trying to mitigate any alleged prejudice, or are you trying to use it as a tactical advantage? I think the box of papers is really a red herring, and it's kind of, put it into context. There was a delay in producing it, but it still was produced 4 months before the trial began. So, and again, there was no particular prejudice associated.
And that's why I didn't find against the defense in the sense that I imposed any sanctions, because there was plenty of time to remedy the problem.
If there's no prejudice, there's no violation. I think that those things...
Oh, there can still be a violation. It goes to the remedy.
Yeah.
Withholding discovery is a violation without prejudice. It's a question of what remedies you then impose.
Well, we could, I suppose, debate the philosophy of that, but that's, I don't think that's relevant, or I don't think we need to do that right now. In any event, we still haven't heard any specific prejudice. And to limit the redirect is an impractical remedy, because how do you do that? Where do you draw the line? And I just think that until the picture is completely fleshed out, and the court finds that there is some specific prejudice that is inured to the people as a result of this one-day delay, to talk about jury instructions, to talk about limiting witnesses, to talk about anything in particular, is inappropriate, because what happens is you're punishing the lawyer, but the detriment goes to the client. And it puts us in a position where what are we going to do about Mr. Plord? If the court is finding that he's a serial violator of the discovery statutes, then maybe he shouldn't be with us. Maybe this is something that the jury will say, well, that Plord is really an evil and despicable person, and it might not be in Mr. Spector's interest to have such a miscreant on the team. It leads to questions and considerations that really are extraneous to finding out what actually happened here. So what I'd ask the court to do is wait and see what all of the facts are, and then we can discuss what the appropriate remedy for any prejudice, if it exists, would be.
Okay, well, to some extent, I'm not going to do it exactly the way you want, but I am actually prepared. I've been giving it, obviously, thought since this issue first arose, as to how to solve it, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. First of all, and thank you.
He's about to let you know right now.
For your points. As to whether there has been a violation because the federal law doesn't seem to hold it, I don't even need to look at the federal cases, and the reason is they're not interpreting the California statute. Those are statutes, or those are cases and decisions that interpret basically federal trial law, which are not controlling this court. I would point out that the new discovery statute, when it was passed, was not passed by the legislature, but instead was passed by the initiative process. It was the direct will of the people of the state of California, and the stated reason was to cut out basically discovery games, and I'll put the word games into quotation marks. If you read the Lamb case is really stands for a much greater proposition than you seem to believe it does. And they were very specific that the language in the statute means exactly what it means, that there's no wiggle room. They're very, very specific that the language speaks for itself. It doesn't need interpretation. It doesn't need to be pondered upon. It means exactly what it says. And let me just note for the record, you and I have known Mr. Plord before this case, and Mr. Rosen and Mr. Dixon, we grew up under a different system, and that system was the prosecution gave discovery and the defense did not. It was that simple. It was viewed at that time that under both the California and the federal Constitution that was a violation of the defendant's constitutional rights not to incriminate himself, and that giving discovery would do that. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court and the California Supreme Court, when the people of the state of California passed this initiative, decided that that wasn't the fact, and that defense discovery was constitutional and should be given. And I'm not denigrating anyone when I say I've been watching it since I was here when the initiative passed, that it is one that the defense bar hates. Especially if you grew up under the old system. You don't like it, you don't believe in it, and believe me, it's given very grudgingly, and everybody looks for a way to get around it. It's just that's the way it is. That's just observation of someone who's been sitting here for 25 years, and I know that to be a fact. Fine, so be it. As I say, the majority of people, if they don't like it, but they understand that they have an absolute obligation to follow it. So the federal law is not controlling. What is controlling is the statute itself, and obviously a case like Lamb, which says we mean exactly what we say is printed on the paper. As to whether or not I believe there has been a violation, I have made my order. I have no doubt, and I say that as clearly as I can, that this was done to gain a tactical advantage. When Dr. Bodden testified, I keep little notes to myself, not so much the testimony as I've stated before, because that's why I have a daily transcript. But I make little notes. Not keeping score, it's just noting interesting things from my standpoint. And believe me, when Dr. Bodden testified as to that new thing, it wasn't just an aha moment to him, it was an aha moment to me. Because I said, let's see how the prosecution does with this one, because this is a major piece of evidence. And it's a major change in defense strategy. And if anyone is going to sit here and tell me, well, it's really not that big, it's just sort of a modification of a prior opinion, I'm going to say that's nonsense. I saw it for what it was, the prosecution saw it for what it was, and I believe the defense saw it for just what it was, that this was very important. And for whatever reason, and it's not just don't put this on Mr. Plord by himself, he may have been in charge of it, but he told me, he stood here in court and said, I discussed it with the other attorneys. So if you've made a bad decision, you all made the bad decision. It's that simple. If you thought it was appropriate, you're wrong. It's that simple. There is a violation. It was done to gain tactical advantage, to throw the prosecution off its game, to delay them in being able to gain information, to properly cross-examine, and to delay their ability to do so, and that's prejudice. Now, because of the amount of time that went by, which was basically a day or two, even though I have found the other things, that has led me to believe that the exclusion remedy is wrong in this case. One, as I have stated before, as the cases have stated, as you have pointed out, that is an extreme remedy. And a judge who goes that route is walking a very fine line on very, very, very thin ice. So I have looked at the timing aspect and whether the prosecution is able to recover. And frankly, as we wind down this case, and I'm going to get into it, we're losing an alternate today. I don't know if you've been notified, but we are losing an alternate because of an illness in the family. And I will tell you that even though we have gone 4+ months with all our alternates and jurors intact, once it starts, it tends to snowball. That is my observation from my years on the bench, and I am now, although we still have 5 alternates and the panel intact, I grow very concerned as this case becomes more and more delayed. And I don't know whether the prosecution is going to take advantage of the time to try to, consult other experts or whatever. We'll find out. But clearly there's a prejudice not only to them, there's a prejudice to the case. So I'm very concerned about what happened, and I do believe that a remedy is necessary. The remedy that I am going to impose, because I have found this is so deliberate and so egregious, and I think that it is, because of the reasons I have found that it was done. And I would point out, before I get to what the remedy is, I want to remind you that from day one, from the time that this group has come into the court as the defense team, the prosecution has literally been yelling for their discovery. They keep saying, where are your experts' reports? Well, we don't have a report. And in hearing Dr. Bodden testify, I sort of wonder, why did it take so long to get his report in here? That's really a really good question, is this 2.5-page report that could have been prepared much earlier and basically came in, if not the last moment, sort of at the later innings. And I think this is just an instance, I think, of a determination to turn over everything at the very last possible minute. Bottom line, there is going to be a remedy. There is a violation. The violation is prejudicial, and there's going to be a remedy. The remedy is going to be, when the case is all done, I am going to draft, with everybody's input, pinpoint instructions pursuant to CalCrim, I believe it's 306. Let me just double check, which is the instruction that has been written and has taken into account the criticisms of the former Calgic. It is 306, the former Calgic instruction, because the Calgic instruction was lacking in that it allowed a jury to draw an inference that they could view this on the guilt issue of the defendant, which can't be done. Mr. Spector is not a part of this. It's his defense team that put us in this situation, and he under law, is not allowed to be blamed for it, and the instruction will point out, and I will make it very clear, because I'll probably modify that as well, it doesn't go to the issue of guilt or innocence, but it does go to the issue of the prosecution's ability to present their case, and I believe it also goes to the issue of how the jury, when they weigh any witness, when they put it into context as to how they weigh that testimony. And because of that there's going to be an instruction, and we can all work on it together, and ultimately I'll be the one that determines the language that goes in. And this is the kind of thing that finally is going to deter lawyers, and it goes for both sides. I see prosecutions, not in this case, but I certainly have seen discovery violations from prosecutors as well, as I'm sure you have, where they play hide the ball. And the only way that we're finally going to put an end to this game playing in criminal trials is when there starts to be a remedy and judges don't look the other way. And I'm not looking the other way. So I'll determine the language when we're done. That's what's going to happen, and I hope that we're ready to proceed with the juror. The jury, by the way, the court finds good cause. The juror is at the airport. Juror number 18, the last alternate, 14, I'm sorry, juror number 14 has a family member. I don't think I'll violate their privacy rights, but is seriously, seriously ill, and they have to go deal with it and cannot wait. They're distraught not only over the family situation, but obviously having put 4 months into this case and now not being a part of it, even if they didn't get to deliberate. So the court finds good cause. And alternate, juror number 14, the alternate, is excused for good cause at this time. I don't think, you know what, I gave everybody a chance to argue, and that's my findings.
He's done with it.
Okay, if you want to respond to the thing about the lateness of the report,
Send me
you
a fucking
certainly may.
letter.
Well, there's three things. One,
Okay.
kind of throwing a conspiratorial net over the defense.
I didn't say a conspiracy.
No, you did. You said,
Well, Mr. Brunon, that's your language, not mine. I said I see a problem.
You said that Mr. Plort discussed it with the team members, and
That's what he said.
I want to remind the court what Mr. Plort did say, and I want to clarify that because I don't want to cut Mr. Plort loose, but he also told the court that he didn't discuss it with Mr. Rosen and myself or anybody else because we wouldn't have fully understood it. And well, I mean, that's what he said. But beyond that,
Dude, judge is getting squirmy. He's getting pissed off. Stop.
I want to find his direct language. Go ahead.
well, I also want to tell the court the facts so that you're not basing it on some interpretation, trying to read something into it that didn't. I'll just tell you this. The first time I heard it was when you heard it, and the first time Mr. Rosen heard it was when you heard it. Mr. Plord is the science lawyer on this case, and he is handling the science presentation and the science confrontation. Okay. So to say that this was some calculated decision is wrong, and to draw that inference is the court putting the thumb on the scales, frankly, and it just there wasn't.
You know what, Mr. Brunon, that language is ridiculous. I find it offensive, and I'm letting you know I find it offensive.
Well,
I'll find the language that Mr. Plord stated to me. I'll show it to you.
Well, I'm telling you the direct facts, so you don't have to.
Well, that's fine, but what am I supposed to do? Ignore his language, and then you say I'm putting the scale on the thumbs? That is really insulting. I'll tell you something. You better withdraw that comment. You better think about it, and I'm just thinking about it. You better withdraw that comment.
I said it was akin to it. I'll withdraw it. It just struck me that you are looking for additional weight that isn't warranted by the facts, and I'm trying to tell you what the facts are. That's point number one. Point number two,
making him withdraw the comment. What the fuck?
Is, again, with the issue of the alternates, we still have 5 alternates, and we're down to the last week of the trial. To suggest that the possibility of losing all 5 alternates and then a juror is somehow a prejudicial fact that's cognizable in this court's calculation, I think is speculative, and I think it's inappropriate, and I think I'm entitled to observe that.
Fine.
And the final thing, to say that I'm going to use this circumstance as a general deterrent to the criminal defense bar and the prosecutorial bar, again, is beyond the scope of what the court should be considering. I think the appropriate considerations are what are the facts in this case and what's the appropriate remedy in this case, and not to send a message to the bar in general. And that sounds like what the court was saying about you're going to put an end to the so-called gameplay. So I think that we're not here to establish lessons. We're here to try to resolve discrete issues in a discrete case that has its own particular facts. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, I agree with you that I'm here to resolve the issue in this case. I am making an aside, and it is no more than an aside, that discovery violations need to be addressed firmly and appropriately.
Your Honor, may I make just one brief comment?
If you wish.
Oh, God.
Thank you. I don't want to spend a lot of time because I think Mr. Brunon has been very articulate this morning, but I think I need to echo a portion of what he said, and that is he is absolutely correct. I don't recall Mr. Plord saying that he discussed it with me or Mr. Brunon. I can tell you this, I did not see Mr. Plord Sunday. I did not see Dr. Baden Sunday. I did not speak with Mr. Plord Sunday. I did not speak with Dr. Baden on Sunday. I had my own work to do. I was buried deep in reading transcripts all day Sunday at my home. And I had no conversation with Mr. Plord Monday morning, and Mr. Brunon is absolutely spot on. The first time I heard, and I know the first time Mr. Brunon heard, the aha testimony was at the same time that the court heard it and the prosecution heard it. And I just want to indicate that if, in fact, the court makes whatever decision it makes regarding what Mr. Plord's motives were or what they weren't, and he is a member of this team and we embrace him, if he made a mistake and if he made a violation, as the court has pointed out, I think that we really have to be very careful when we step away from making the finding of the violation, making the finding of the prejudice, and getting to the remedial considerations, because true, Mr. Plord is one of the team members and he represents Mr. Spector, but I'm just concerned that the jury does not punish Mr. Spector for what, in fact, Mr. Plord did if the court, in fact, finds that Mr. Plord overstepped his bounds. That's all.
Well, I accept that, and I don't, if you and Mr. Brunon tell me you weren't a part of it, that's fine. I only have what the statement was by Mr. Plord, and I'm going to find it, because it's gotten to be a point, and nobody spoke up at the time. If you tell me now that he was misspoke, that's fine.
I didn't even hear him say
Well,
it.
I'll be glad to, I'll be glad.
I'm telling you those are the facts, and I would get up on that witness stand and tell
Fine,
you the facts.
and I
I'll
accept
get
that
up
you
on
would
that
do that.
witness
I am
stand.
telling you what I was told.
I understand.
Okay? And it doesn't change, even if I find that Mr. Brunon and Mr. Rosen did not know about it, it doesn't change the fact that a member of the team did do it and the team is responsible. So that's that, but it doesn't change
Right.
what happened in the case. You can't say, well, he did it, we didn't, so it doesn't count anymore.
You're not thinking of giving the vicarious liability instruction to the jury, are you?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Actually, what I want to do, let's go ahead and bring the jurors in. I'll locate this. I don't want to delay the case any more than we have to.
Blair Ford
Does the
walking
prosecution
up.
wish to be heard?
The only issue is I won't do it now, but if Mr. Plord, I don't know if he's intending to get into the issue of the transection of the spine. If he does, and I feel like it goes further than simply the when did you come up with this, then I will object on scope grounds. I was very clear about what I did and what I didn't do.
I know, I'll be honest with you, you told me that's what you wanted to do, and that, I have no doubt that was your intent. I'm not sure that the way the answers came out, and I found that they were appropriate to the questions that were being asked. I'm not sure I...
Coming into a spicy morning here with Judge Diehard, and he's not messing around. Let me just tell you what, real quick, okay?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
can limit it. The bottom line,
Fine.
and I probably will not, the bottom line is, as I said, the witness will not be excused.
Yes.
All right? Thank you. The jury is coming out. Can we deal with it later? Sure. Okay, thank you.
He's like, shut the fuck up. Good God. We're going into part 9 of Dr. Baden's testimony. 53 minutes, and I don't think this is still even the last yet. Thanks, everyone, for coming in. Let's get the name up here. Name and the name. Oh, wrong one. Let me get Baden back. Hold on. Hold on. Let me get the Baden name back on the screen so we can see it. So the friends can see it. So we can know who's talking on the stand.
Sworn and still under oath, the jurors and the alternates, with the exception of number 14, are present. Dr. Baden is present,
Welcome to the party, pal.
still under oath, and you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Baden. We had Exhibit S8 on the screen before, and do you have that before you, Dr. Baden?
Which is S8?
That's the scene where the Lana Clarkson's body is being prepared
yes,
for
I have it
transport. Okay, we could get S8 there. You were talking before we left about...
Boom! Before we even get started in here, let's give a little bit of love to Gabby. Gabby just recently won a shirt coming through and giving out a little $3, a $3 bill on the table. Thank you so much.
I'm telling you like it is,
I
baby.
appreciate the hell out of it. You know what I'm talking about, baby. Shit.
Give me the loot. Give me the loot.
Hell yeah, Gabby. Thank you so much. I know Gabby was hanging out with us for Frankenhooker a little bit on Friday. She was seeing some wild stuff on there. I think she was enjoying it. That's what I think. That was like that's a fun movie. Okay, Frankenhooker is super fun. We're up to 5 names now, guys. 7 to go till we get a wheel spin. Again, anybody that's just walking in, got a sticker pack we're giving out right now. We got the new Dandy Savage sticker, Partner in Crime sticker, and also behind that is a Murder Church sticker as well. We got a nice 3-pack here. Boom. Going to go out in the mail to some fine Buzz Nation member. And also I've got some coasters, some classic PB, the pink logo coasters coming through. That's going to be pretty rad. It'll be like this. Probably a little bit bigger, I'd imagine. Maybe not. Might be about perfect. But this is a sticker. But it's going to be some coasters that look like this. So I'm excited to get those as well. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out this morning.
Generally, the procedures when a body is moved, that sometimes precautions are taken in certain ways, and in this particular case, it appears that a sheet or cloth was put overhead to do something. What was that designed to prevent, as you understand it?
According to Ms. Lindemuth's report.
Shit, Kathy's not done. Kathy also wants a spot on the wheel. She helped out Bassett Page earlier, and now she sent through a 420 for us here. Thank you, Kathy, so much. I appreciate that. Get you and Pumpkin on the wheel with the possibility of getting some of these stickers. So that gets us halfway through a wheel.
Now, I don't do drugs, though. Just weed.
Report,
Thank you, Kathy.
Carnage
Amazing.
white sheet was put
Helping me
around
out. Charlotte
the
coming through and sharing us on
face and
X.
head of
Thanks,
Ms.
everyone.
Clarkson
Great morning.
to prevent any fluids from coming out of the mouth and
Holy shit.
contaminating.
Damn, Joe Schmo not messing around this morning. Joe, thank you so much, brother. Holy crap. Let me read these names out real quick. Goodness gracious. Smirky. Awesome name, first of all. Lamom James, welcome back. That's an old school G. Heather C, get in here. Melon Shower 123. I feel like you'd fit in on Feral Friday, Melon Shower. Get the hell in here. And Tracy K, welcome in, everybody. Let's go, new members.
Welcome to the party,
Thanks
pal.
to Joe, and Joe becoming the halfway point here on this wheel. Joe Schmo might be getting a sticker pack here. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate that. I believe that's got us at 6 now. Well, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Excuse me. We're up to more than halfway. We need 5 more names. 5 more names until we get this thing going. Holy cow. Thank you so much. I appreciate the shit out of that.
You gotta fight for your right.
Hell yeah. Give everybody a little bit of love.
Just chilling.
Just chilling.
Respect my house.
Let's go.
Oh man, I shot Marvin in the face.
Why the fuck you do that? I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
I didn't remember that one more often. I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing. Joe, thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
The rest of the clothing.
Okay, and in talking and understanding what happens in a case, do you sometimes rely upon reports such as criminalists that work for medical examiner's office, both in your experience as well as in your private forensic practice?
Bassett
Yes.
Page with the
Okay, so
sheriff.
you've reviewed
Thanks,
those.
everyone.
Those are
Yes.
part of all the reports that were given to you in this case. Is that true?
Nation, not messing
Yes.
around.
Okay, and
believe
what
we're
was
on
your
part 9
understanding from the
of, Bob's
photographs
testimony.
and the reports as to how
been
the
up here
body
for
was
literally days
wrapped
and
up
weeks for us.
and taken to the medical examiner's office here in Los Angeles County?
The reports from Ms. Lindemuth is that she removed certain evidence from the remains of Ms. Clarkson at the scene from 6:10 to about 7:10 for about an hour. Then discussed in a report whether to remove clothing at the scene or put the white sheet around the face to prevent contamination of the clothing. They decided to, after talking to the supervisor, to put the white sheet around the face, remove the body, placed it in a plastic, placed it into a body bag, remove the body to the coroner's office, and about 30 minutes later was in the coroner's office, placed on a table.
Okay, let me stop you there and
That was
back
the
up.
procedure.
Dude, I hope when Judge Dalhard finds what Plord said, he just stops everything. All right, everyone out. Me and you, Plord. What are we doing right now, boss? Huh? What are we doing? We're fighting.
Now, was it your understanding that the hands were wrapped or not wrapped before?
The hands were not protected in the paper bags that I'm accustomed to.
What's the significance, if any, of that?
Well, the purpose of putting paper bags around hands is to prevent any contamination of the fingers and hands because they're often important in when a crime has been committed.
Okay. Now, Ms. Lintemuth, the criminalist, documented in her reports and records that she did certain evidence collection from the hands before the body was transported. Was that appropriately documented in your view as far as her report was concerned?
Yes, Ms. Lindemuth lists that she had removed, she did a gunshot residue test on the hands at the scene. She put an acetate tape and lifted up trace evidence and from the front of the jacket.
At this point, excuse me, doctor, at this point I'm going to object on hearsay grounds. Unless this is being used, it appears that the witness is simply reading from a report. Unless this is being used as the foundation for some opinion, it sounds like Mr. Plord is simply asking him to reiterate to the jurors what Ms. Lintemuth did, and he's doing so through a hearsay report. It's inappropriate.
Doctor, did you use this information to arrive at any opinion in this matter?
Yes.
All right, the objection is overruled.
Okay. Yeah.
You were talking about Ms. Lintemuth. Let me focus your attention on this, Dr. Bodden. You talked about a tape lift. Did Ms. Lintemuth also document the collection of something from the hands other than gunshot residue? Just a yes or no on that.
She did.
I'm sorry.
Okay, and did it involve blood spatters on the backs of the hands and wrists?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you this question, and for counsel's edification, it's from, and the court, volume 30.
That's just common practice. Red solo cups are, an integral part of police work. Yeah, just put her hands in the solo cups. I got them in the car. Hold on.
Of the transcript of this trial.
Morning, next chapter.
Page 5299.
That sounds cool.
Did
Happy birthday
Ms.
to the niece.
Lintemuth indicate that she took swabs from the left
on a Sunday, baking a cake.
wrist and right wrist? Did she indicate that?
Speaking of bacon.
And did she also indicate that she saw these blood spatters on the wrists and hands?
Yes.
Okay. And did you take that into consideration in arriving at your opinions and conclusions in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned in some testimony, I think that was
This is actually
with,
this is
Mr.
just
Jackson.
what we do now. This is our lives. Us, this court case, and Dr. Bodden. This is just our lives. We have died. We are in purgatory. We are in hell. Everything happening through the week is not reality. This is actual reality. This is what's really happening, and we're trapped.
And that there was some problems with the photography. What was trying to be photographed, as far as you could understand, as it related to problems?
She wrote down and stated in a testimony that she took swabs of the blood from the wrists and had the back of the hands photographed. Asked the photographer to take photos of the blood what she considered blood spatter on the back of the hands, and those photographs didn't come out properly.
Okay, is that significant at all?
Well, it's significant in evaluating the blood spatter.
Okay. Now, if we could have that last exhibit back up again. Before we leave the scene, based upon the way that the body was transported, is there any problem with evidence coming off the body or off the clothing that's on the body that could affect anything that you could look at in this case, the way they did it?
Yes.
What is that, if you could explain that to the jury?
Some evidence is transient. It's transient because it fall off or get lost during transport. The transport process is very important in the forensic sciences. So by putting a person in a body bag without protection of the clothing or the hands may permit loss of evidence from the body into the plastic sheet.
Okay. Now, it's your understanding that the body was taken to the medical examiner's office and was collected at a later time, is that correct?
Yeah, it was brought down and promptly that same evening examined at the medical examiner's office. Ms. Lindemuth says that at 20:20, with 8:20, that is, she starts out about an hour earlier, the decedent was...
Objection, this is non-responsive narrative at this point.
Sustained.
Dr. Bodden, with reference to the head, would the sheet that was used, would that stop this purge material from coming out?
Oh, that's a good idea, Bass.
Well,
I like that. I like that idea. I'll probably have to get it made or drawn up, but that's a really cool idea. I'm putting that in my ideas right now for sure.
Purpose of the
I like that.
putting a sheet around the head, according to the record, was to prevent blood and purge materials from coming out of the nose and mouth and contaminating the body or the clothing.
Now, would the sheet protect the head from moving around and causing movement of the spinal bones and so forth where the fractures were?
No.
And you mentioned that this bullet wound went through the spine and it broke some bones in the spinal column. Is that correct?
Yes.
This is beyond the scope. Beyond the scope of my cross.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I'm going to answer.
sorry.
Now, when those bones are broken, do they have are they sharp? Are they not sharp? What could they do, if anything, because they're broken?
The edges of the fractured bones are sharp.
And what effect, if any, can that have on the spinal column?
Well, that would be an additional risk.
Gabby, have a great Sunday. Thanks for hanging.
Injury to the spinal column during movement of the body from the chair to the morgue wagon to the table, period.
When the body was taken to the coroner's office, does Ms. Lindemuth describe how the body is processed and how the clothing is done? Does she say anything as to how, whether it was moved, gingerly or not so gingerly or anything such as that?
Yes.
What does she say?
She says the body was flipped onto its side, onto the left side, for purposes of photography, so photos could be taken of the body and further examination.
Before the clothing was removed, is that correct?
Before the clothing was removed, yes, sir.
And also after the clothing was removed, is that correct?
She was moved around on the table before and after the clothing was removed, yes.
Now, Dr. Bodden, in your experience, you've done autopsies in traumatic death situations, automobile accidents, knife wounds, gunshot wounds. Have you ever seen injuries such as the ones that Ms. Clarkson has had where there's been partial or incomplete transections of the spinal cord?
Yes.
Relevance.
Overruled. I'll allow it.
Yes.
In other words, where some part but not all of the spinal cord was cut or damaged. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And in this particular case at autopsy, at the time of the autopsy, when the procedure was done, the dissection was done, the spinal cord was completely severed. Is that correct?
Oh, got a share from Jay this morning. Thanks, brother.
It was found to be severed when the autopsy reached that part of the examination, yes.
And does that mean that it was that way when the shot was fired or immediately thereafter?
No.
Jabronius.
I want to move on and get to the issue of the fingernail or the acrylic of the nail on the left thumb. And
Murder Church is actually Groundhog
that,
Day. Wild side.
Exhibit PP be put up.
It's one of the greatest films of all time. Damn, no, fuck. I think he's looking at the judge with that contempt right now on his face. Good Lord. He looks actually intense right here. Imagine that face. Waking up to that every morning. Goodness gracious.
Defense Exhibit PP. And I'm going to ask that another, basically a clearer photograph of the exact same picture be marked, Your Honor, because simply I'd like the doctor to look at this, and it just shows the detail better than the photograph that we have. I don't know if we should mark it the same number or whether we should just renumber it.
This would be V11.
V11. Okay. V11. Doctor, I'm going to show you this photograph and ask you, is this basically a glossy, more detailed, a little bit clearer photograph than Exhibit PP, essentially?
It's the same photograph as PP, but it's sharper, certainly, for me to look at.
Okay, and what is the significance of that piece of acrylic that was that is shown in this portion of the photograph here that you also have a better copy of?
The significance to me is that it's evidence, it indicates that the right thumb was on the trigger at the time of discharge of the weapon, because I've seen various thumb injuries before under those circumstances.
Now, with reference to...
Yeah, Leia's been here for a little while now, and she's still only seen a few of these witnesses. It's pretty wild. And I know that there's people that's come and gone during the last year here with Publicly Buzzed, but what's really impressive is the folks that have stayed through this entire trial. Holy crap! And the new folks that have come through. For the longest time, I would get comments from Bassett Page is always leaving comments when she's catching up and she needs to. But there was this one person, I don't remember their name because they didn't become like a regular person, but they did come in a few times during the lives. But they would always leave. At first, they would leave these comments like, "Oh, I hate it when this guy talks," yada yada. They were pretty rude. And I was always nice to him, though. I was always like, it takes a lot to get me to really kind of tell you to fuck off, which does happen. But he just kept on, I try to win folks over if I can, and I finally did. One morning, he's like, "Oh, you know what? This guy's rubbing on. I'm starting to enjoy his commentary." And I was like, "Holy shit!" And then he came in one morning and seemed to have a good time. He didn't stick around. Hell, he may still watch, and he's going to hear me talking about it right now. But pretty interesting. You never know. But thanks everyone that's been hanging out and new folks, whatever. Donnie in here. What's up, Donnie?
The evaluation of the case materials in this case, did you ever review the laboratory records of Dr. Lynn Harold as it relates to...
This trial was picked through a voting system, all right? And I did put the trial in because at the time, it was last year when Karen Reed was about to start, if I'm not mistaken, right before or right after, and I knew Alan Jackson was going to be the attorney, the attorney for Karen Reed. So I was like, man, that will be perfect. It's already a super hot trial. And then put that on the bracket to be voted on a Feral Friday, and this is what won, and it is what it is. This has been a very interesting trial. This is only season 4 of Murder Church, all right, which is insane. Season 3 was like a month. It was a very quick trial out of Tennessee. Season 1 was Jeffrey Dahmer. Season 2 was Dr. Kevorkian with Bob. Bob stayed through for that one.
To this tape lift that was taken by Miss Linsema.
Yes.
Okay. We could have Exhibit I-6 on, and then we'll go back to PP in a minute.
It's true. You're always a dear. All right, Sylvia, that's hilarious. He goes full Skullet when he's in the old, the big house.
Okay, showing you I to the 6th. Is this a photograph of the tape lift that was recovered from Lana Clarkson's skirt area, basically somewhere in the midsection?
Yes.
The old guy Jr., that's right. He was season 3. Very interesting one, though. Killed his parents, boiled his mother's head on the stove. His plan fell completely apart mid-plan. He fucked himself up badly. He fucked his hands up real badly during the murders by stabbing. Dude, that's an insane story. That guy's an idiot. Joel Guy Jr., like instantly was caught for murdering his parents. Like I think he wanted the insurance money, and he was a lazy college kid that was already flunking out. There's a lot there, but
by Miss Lintamuth.
It's all in the archives.
Looked at by Dr. Harold at her laboratory sometime after she got that.
Thought he looked like
this
the
case.
penguin.
Yes, and did you
Joel
consider
Guy Jr.
her notes and her
I think that's what
report
my thumbnail
regarding
is a play
what
on
she
the
observed
penguin.
on this, in particular, anything with relationship to any nail or nail-type material?
Yes.
What did you consider, and why did you
Waters.
consider it, Dr. Bott?
I considered Ms. Harold's
Love that
description of a fragment. I think she circled, this is the circled fragment.
Definitely
Small
drew a
fragments
lot of really cool people through this one.
up here, yeah. In which she says, when she looked at it under her microscope, that it was a white opaque fragment, question mark, part of fingernail polish. And that's exactly what the tip of that acrylic is. It's white, opaque fingernail polish.
Now, this doesn't appear to be the entire missing portion, is that correct?
No, it's a fragment. It's a shattered fragment.
You can see nothing.
Why wouldn't this be the entire size of what's missing? What would be the discrepancy?
Well, this is a little fragment. There's about a quarter of an inch by an eighth of an inch or so missing. You know, so the tip of the finger. Could you go back to the previous?
Sure. Let's go back to the previous exhibit.
Yeah. The only part missing. Remember, the whole fingernail is perhaps an inch. This is a tiny tip of the fingernail, the kind that I cut off when I try to shorten my fingernails. And this white opaque is part of what's called a French manicure. A French manicure in which white opaque fingernail polish
Can you explain
is
a little bit more about a French
carefully
manicure
placed
for us,
on the
please,
tip,
Dr.
just
Bob?
the
I'll be right back,
exposed
guys.
tip of the finger that's growing, the fingernail. The underlying fingernail is intact. The fingernail isn't broken. That's the underlying fingernail, and the only thing missing, and this is exactly what Dr. Harold describes. And she says in her note that she's going to ask the investigating officer, should she do any more investigation, any more examination of it, and she didn't.
Okay. So this is, she described it in her notes as a one white opaque fragment, question mark, part of fingernail polish. You mentioned something about these French, what did you call them?
French manicure.
And you know something about this, doctor?
We have, medical examiners have to know about articles of clothing and how fingernails are done, so we can describe things that we see at autopsy.
You don't have that on your hand?
I must admit, I did Google this yesterday also.
Okay. But you've run into these
Yes.
issues before, correct?
Yes, my wife
And she gets
occasionally.
Okay. In any event, the white portion is actually something that's painted on, and there's polish. Is it what's the process as you understand it? I don't want to go into the whole details, but as you understand it.
The nail is cleaned and a base coat put on it to make it smooth, and then the acrylic in this instance doesn't have to be on acrylic, it can be on regular nails. And then the acrylic is painted on it, placed on it, painted on.
At this point, I'm going to object. There's no foundation. If the basis for this witness's foundation for nails and polish and et cetera is Google, I don't think that's appropriate for expert testimony. I mean,
I think
sort of lay.
you know what? If it really gets to be a question, you can call an expert. But for right now, I'm going to let him indicate his opinion. All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not an expert on fingernails. However, I just want to make the point that then the fingernail polish is put on it, and special polish is put on the tip. You see,
the white portion.
The white portion.
The white opaque portion.
What I'm concerned about is a special thick fingernail polish that gives the appearance of the manicure, the French manicure, and that what Dr. Harold describes, the fragment, describes this exactly. And she was concerned about that. She saw that. She says, fingernail, question, part of fingernail polish, and indicates that she's going to ask the investigating officers whether she should.
Objection, this calls for speculation.
It's in
as to-
here.
Excuse me.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
Move to strike the last portion.
The last portion is
Sorry.
well.
Okay. Even that's in her notes? I think that's in her notes.
What is in her notes has already been testified to. His impression of Dr. Harold's impressions or her
This
considerations
impressions
are
is
speculation.
inappropriate.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Oh, okay, no, no, I'm not saying it. I'll leave it.
Now
Okay,
you know where we're-
Dr. Bodden, let's go back to the, what do they call, French?
French manicure.
Okay. This portion here is it looks different than the natural nail because it's a coloring, painting, or what do they call
It's
it?
a specific, thick,
Put a hoodie on.
white
Getting cold down here.
nail polish
Okay.
that's painted on to
It's
the
registered
tip of the
and starts
nail.
moving.
Okay, and getting back to, and is it your impression or understanding that when this breaks, it doesn't necessarily break off in one piece?
It can shatter into tiny little pieces, as was picked up on the tape impression that.
Objection, that calls for speculation, that assumes facts not in evidence, that anything from this nail was actually picked up on the tape. The notes are clear that it's a question.
Okay.
You can ask it in a different form. The question is sustained.
Okay,
The
in any
objection is
event,
sustained.
Doctor, your experience is that when people trigger weapons in these self-inflicted situations, this type of damage to their fingernails can occur. Is that
That's
correct?
right. It goes along with every action. There's a reaction. The thumb is.
God, how many times have we? I mean,
The thumb is
I swear we're just
pressed
going over the
against
same thing
the
with this
trigger, and the weapon recoils and toward the shooter, and the fingernail can, or the thumb, can be injured by the metal trigger guard around the trigger.
Okay. We could have a minute here.
Yes.
Hands are cold.
Now, in the photograph that we've had remarked, the same one here, if you could come and on the more clear photograph, if you could get up and show the jurors the area of the thumb that you think was somehow impacted by the trigger guard or weapon during the course of this event.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. And on the back of that, we have the number. I'm going to make sure. V up to the 11.
What I'm referring to is this little piece, kind of piece.
Dr. Mann?
This tiny piece here. This piece right here is missing from the paper. This little piece is where the nail polish is missing.
Squeaking in my chair.
It's this little piece here. That's missing. It's in a shadow, a little bit of a shadow.
Your Honor, if there's no question pending, I would appreciate it if all testimony be limited. I don't want the...
I agree.
Thank you.
Morning.
Brooklyn,
Doctor, before you go back, we're going to do this in the reverse order here. On this particular photograph, you can also see the index finger, and does there appear to be a little bit of damage to the tip of the index finger also that's on this, that you can see on this exhibit?
Yeah, there's a little bit
Shelley.
of appears to me to be wear,
Happy Sunday.
normal wear
That's
of the
awesome.
fingernail on that tip. Yes, so a little piece of the
You're having a good visit with the old
tiny
kids.
piece of the white polish has frayed off in the normal course of wear.
Is Biden going to show us a French manicure? He's like, AJ, Mr. Jackson, please come on up.
And tear.
does that mean? I've never had a manicure. Oh man, how do you get those white? I guess it's just that's fingernail polish is the white tip. It's really just to hide dirty fingernails. Can't fool me. Can't fool me. What's happening? What's going on?
Dr. Bodden, I want to, while we have this picture here, I want to jump to another subject and then continue on with the fingernail briefly. But this particular area of the finger on the photograph, is that the other little blood spot that people have been talking about that you mentioned before?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
90-degree angle, direct blood spot.
okay. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about the weapon that was recovered, the gun that was found at the scene, 38 caliber Colt Cobra. Is there anything about the weapon that is inconsistent with it causing damage, such as the damage to this acrylic that we've been talking about?
No.
I'm going to have you look at the a video of the gun being shot. And you've seen a video of this, of a Colt Cobra 38 being shot before?
Yes.
Okay. And this is exhibit B7.
Just to clarify, I think Mr. Floyd just misstated. I want to make sure the record is clear. He said the gun being shot. It's clear that this is not the Colt Cobra that's in evidence, not the weapon that killed Lon Clarkson.
Agreed.
All right, thank
and
you.
it's a Colt Cobra, a similar one.
Okay, go. Take your finger off the trigger when you do that, please. Yeah, go.
The Spitz.
Okay. Now, Dr. Bodden,
I believe they showed this during Spitz testimony.
a couple of questions
I think
here.
Warner Spitz comes back also.
When
guys.
if the gun was being held as you believe it was, being held with it inside the mouth, the recoil would be in the same direction. There'd be no real difference in the recoil. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And
Next time he comes to court, he's going to come with just his thumb done, so he can prove it. They're going to bring out a gun. And he's going to chip it as he tries to fire it or fires it. Probably in a safe
does
way.
a gun
not to
like
his
this
face, you know what I'm saying?
have enough of a recoil to cause the injuries to this acrylic or the damage to this acrylic?
Yes.
Okay. And the recoil, as far as the sight of the gun, is it consistent with the particles that were found in it, the teeth particles that were found in it? In other words, hitting the post and natural tooth that was found on it?
Yes, and it would be the sight hitting the natural tooth after the composite had been blown away, exposing the natural tooth.
Okay, and when the composite or the non-natural tooth was blown away, did it cause damage to the inside of the lips right in front of those where the composite material would be?
A little bit of pinpoint hemorrhages could have been caused by those fragments of composite. Most of it went out of the mouth.
Okay, but it hit the inside of the lips, kind of went out all in the same process, that immediate recoil process, correct?
Yes.
Now, would that further suggest as physical evidence or physical injury that would suggest that the lips were lightly closed over the barrel of the gun?
Yes, that the inside of the lips had to be exposed to the outgoing fragments of bone, of composite.
And did Dr. Pena describe the same injuries in the autopsy report? These inside the lips little, he called it pseudo-stippling?
Yes, he did, and he described that. That's what I'm referring to also.
Okay, and you both looked at that when you were at the autopsy, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and was that part of the evaluation, the oral cavity evaluation that basically suggested to you that the gun was inside the mouth, the fact that there was injury from these particles of fake tooth or crowns that injured the inside of the mouth before they went out,
Yes,
along with all the other findings. Is that true?
yes.
Now, Mr. Jackson asked you if you were at the scene, so you saw the stairs and the area there. Is that true?
Yes.
That was before you knew any of the, you didn't know where the teeth were found at that point or anything such as that. Is that correct?
That's right. I saw the scene of death after Miss Clarkson's body had been removed and after the crime lab had removed everything they could find that was of evidentiary value.
Okay,
and that
now,
was about 38 hours after the shooting.
Dr. Bodden, I want to now...
That has been a subject of contention during this, for sure, Carrie.
Get back to, I've got a photograph of...
And currently, Linda is out of the courtroom sick, and she's been out of the courtroom sick basically since Bodden's been up here testifying. So take that however you'd like.
The buttons, which is Peter the 11th. This was one of the photographs you were shown yesterday. I'm going to show you this one, then I want to mark another one next in order after that. This is the one that Mr. Jackson was asking you about regarding the tissue on the sleeves and so forth. Did you rely upon the observations of tissue on microscopic slides as it relates to this particular jacket that was worn by Miss Clarkson that was taken off at the coroner's office?
Yes.
When the description of the microscopic slides that show tissue, do they show blood? Is it your understanding they show blood on these slides also, or just tissue?
The microscopic slides prepared from these buttons, which I think weren't done until January of this year, January of 2007, took little fragments from each of these buttons on the left the left forearm, and those, because they look to us, I saw this in May of '07 at the Sheriff's Department when there was an examination of the evidence, and myself and some other of the forensic pathologists noted the possible presence of tissue on the buttons. And the only way to be certain whether it's tissue would be to look at it under the microscope. And what I mean by tissue is human material from the skin or just under the skin or in the mouth, human tissue. And that was removed, as I recall, around January of this year.
Okay.
And then the microscopic slides were sent to Dr. DeMeo and examined.
Okay, and would this tissue, would it have anything to do with the type of tissue that comes out? If somebody shoots themselves in the mouth and there's no exit wound and there's blood and tissue that comes out of the mouth?
Yes, that was our concern about this.
Okay, and was it your understanding that the areas that were selected were areas where there was tissue so that you could find out what kind of tissue it might be?
Well, to find out if it were tissue, if it came from the mouth, and it was tissue under the microscope. It proved to be under the microscope, because you can't tell with the naked eye really, except that it's something unusual, and it could be tissue. But under the microscope, this turned out to have nuclei and cells resembling material from the oral cavity, tissues from the oral cavity. And what was also noteworthy in the microscopic slides is
thanks for coming in here this morning. Should you? Headed to Ohio.
there was no blood around it. There's no free blood around it.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to ask that another exhibit be marked next in order, and this is picture ZY9B-30.
W11.
Yeah, happy birthday. Got a lot of birthdays happening.
I'm sorry, I missed
Love
the
it.
number.
W.
W, thank you.
11.
Dr. Bond, while we're getting this exhibit up there, did Ms. Lintemuth describe in her report in the handling of the body, talk about the issue of this purge that occurred?
Yes.
Okay, and did she document in her report the fact that there was a purge that came out of the body at the medical examiner's office? And did she also describe in her report and records where the purge went and what it covered?
Yes.
And in evaluating the evidence in this case, did you consider that report and the fact that this purge event occurred?
Yes.
Now, before we talk about where it went and what was it, a purge? You mentioned it was fluids that basically, secretions that somehow build up after death that are common. Is that correct?
Yeah, purge fluids are fluids that accumulate mostly in the nose and mouth after death as the tissues inside the nose and mouth begin to decompose and begin to break down because of lack of oxygen and blood flow and because of bacterial activities. And this can also be augmented in a situation like this by blood and other fluids that are flowing into the oral cavity and the nose area because of pre-existing trauma. So what we as pathologists and Dr. Lintemuth as a criminalist have to be careful of is to avoid the purge fluids contaminating the body or the clothing, and she attempted to do that.
Okay, but apparently that something happened where there was some movement of that. Is that correct? The purge came out?
Ms. Lintemuth indicates that after the body was put on the autopsy table in the medical examiner's office for further examination that same evening, they were working that night, that a lot of purge fluids that she tried to prevent came out of the nose and mouth.
That's crazy, Ruthie, coming through here. Welcome in, first of all. I lived in Los Angeles when all this was happening, and the best part was the LA Times newspaper, yes, the actual paper, doing a weekly recap cartoon showing Phil's hair Monday through Friday. That's amazing. Holy crap.
After the body was flipped onto its left side, and the left part of the dress was contaminated, left part of the jacket was contaminated by the fluids flowing down from her nose and mouth into the jacket, and she tried to describe that.
Okay, and did she describe it as going a certain distance?
Yes, she said it went down toward the elbow area, but didn't go down to the buttons.
Okay, and getting...
I'm going to check, Your Honor, that assumes facts, not an evidence.
And one from New Zealand.
I believe that was her testimony also, Your Honor. That was also...
What are the facts, not an evidence? What is it assuming?
I need to think about what the answer was. I'll withdraw it for the time being. If I can think of it,
okay.
Maybe in 10 minutes I'll have an epiphany.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Subject to the epiphany that Mr. Jackson will have, I'm going to ask you some follow-up questions because we're going to wait for that. If we could have W11 up again. Is this picture, Dr. Bodden, a photograph of the...
We stream this every Sunday. This is, I'm sure, as you know, if you followed it in real time. I covered about once a week, and we're over a year into this son of a bitch. So welcome in.
Jacket area around the buttons that you were talking about, just a different photograph that was taken by the Sheriff's Department or some other agency?
Yes.
Okay, and so the area where this tissue was, is it this white stuff here that we're looking at in Exhibit W to the 11?
Well, actually, it's the material on the buttons themselves.
Okay.
The material I tried to point out, sort of a little reddish material on the buttons.
Okay. Were these buttons like in a pool of blood or anything such as that?
No, in my opinion, and in interpreting what Ms. Lindemuth wrote down, it's my opinion that the purge fluids didn't get near to that area. It ended somewhere around the upper arm area.
Okay, and the purge material, we'll just use that term, does it include...
Purge material.
Tissue, does purge have this tissue in it?
Not tissue after she been sitting for about 15 hours or so, and any tissue would have been removed from the fluid by the natural settling of the tissue and its incorporation into fibrin and blood clot that develops while the blood is in the mouth, so that what comes out is blood without red cells and platelets and white cells, which are largely clotted and don't flow out with the purge fluid, and tissue doesn't flow out with the purge fluid.
Okay, and I take it that you deal with this phenomenon of the purge because basically this is something that naturally occurs after death, and you have to know the difference between something that's there because of a purge versus not. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true, yes.
Okay. And let me ask you this, Doctor, with reference to the sleeve and the tissue and so forth, did your observations of the jacket and where these tissues and the slides that you looked at from the tissues, did that play a part in your overall evaluation of this case?
It contributed to my evaluation of the case, yes.
Okay. Now, what was your understanding of whether or not there was any tissues of the type that come out of the mouth when the shot is fired, whether there were any of these tissues, such as you saw in Lana Clarkson's jacket, on the, let's start with the pants of Mr. Spector that were evaluated by the crime lab. Was there any found on that?
There were no tissue found on Mr. Spector's clothing, certainly not on the pants.
Not on the jacket?
Not on the jacket.
Not on the shirt?
Not on his shirt.
Not on his shoes?
Not on his shoes.
Not on his cuffs, his left cuff?
No.
His right cuff?
No.
Inside, outside?
No.
Did you take that into consideration?
Yes.
As far as the blood spatter, was the fact that there was no blood spatter on Mr. Spector's shoes considered?
Yes.
His pants?
Yes.
His shirt?
Yes.
And then the distribution or pattern of blood that was found and the type of blood that was found on his coat, you considered that also?
Well,
yes.
Welcome in here. Good to see you, brother.
Dr. Bond, I want to now move to the jacket for a minute and ask that B9 be put back up. You have a copy of that before you.
I'm still waiting for the judge to find what Plord said. We'll start reaming him.
Thank you.
The day's over.
Mr. Jackson was asking you whether or not
He was pissed this morning.
you hold
guys.
yourself out to be a blood
super
spatter
spicy this
expert.
morning.
And I believe your
Outside
testimony
the
was that
presence
you
of the
don't
jury.
necessarily do that. Is that correct?
I'm not a blood spatter expert.
Okay. Do you ever consider the patterns that blood make as far as evaluating a case and consider information from other blood spatter experts, that type of thing?
Yeah, I consider distribution of blood on clothing as part of the expertise of a forensic pathologist. I don't measure the blood spatters as the fine mist or 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters. That would be beyond my expertise. But the distribution is, just like I'm not a toxicologist, but I evaluate and it's my job to interpret what the toxicologist finds.
Okay. So you looked at information regarding the blood spatters that were on Ms. Clarkson's hands, is that correct? You looked at what was available to you?
Yes.
The type of spatters. You looked at the spatters that were on her clothing, is that correct? You considered that? You considered the distribution of blood, the pattern of blood that was on Mr. Spector's coat, is that correct?
Yes.
And to the extent that something is a millimeter or more than a millimeter, you leave that to the blood spatter.
I just put a poll up there, thanks to low light coming through here. Can get rid of one word forever. Purge or moist?
Beyond my expertise.
Mr. Stewart James, you looked at this jacket that's in this particular exhibit.
It's a tough one, guys.
You looked at this jacket with Mr. James, is that correct, Stewart James?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Dr. Henry Lee?
Yes.
You reviewed that joint report that those three gentlemen did regarding the blood spatters, is that correct?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. This assumes facts, not evidence.
Approach the bench. Ladies and gentlemen, the testimony or the question and answers that dealt with relying on the report from Dr. Henry Lee, that is stricken. You're admonished to disregard it.
And moist is beating out purge.
All right, you may proceed.
Heavily.
Thank you, Your Honor.
85 to
I'll
15%.
Dr. Bodden, as far as the pattern itself, you were able to see what was on the jacket yourself personally, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll just leave it at that and we'll move on, Dr. Bodden. If we could have People's Exhibit number 44, I'm going to move to another subject, and it deals with the bruising on the tongue. If we could highlight the area in the left corner of the tongue itself, this is a diagram, State's Exhibit 44, that was done by Dr. Pena at the time of the autopsy or shortly thereafter. Is that correct?
Yes, after the autopsy.
Okay, and
shortly after the autopsy.
In addition to are diagrams the type of thing that pathologists like yourself do when you do an autopsy?
Yes.
Okay, and how do they relate to photographs? In other words, what's the interplay? Why do you do a diagram rather than a photograph?
Well, you do a diagram while taking notes in time of the autopsy to highlight the findings that are important, to make measurements, the actual measurements on the specimen, and indicate them on the diagram paper, as Dr. Pena has done here. And also because sometimes photographs don't come out, so that if photographs don't come out, at least you have a diagram as to what you saw.
Okay, now this particular lesion here, this bruise on the left side, it's put in this diagram, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is there when you do an autopsy and you document it by a report, do you also describe significant things in the autopsy report?
Yes.
Okay, and how does Dr. Pena describe the injuries or the trauma to the tongue and the bruising, particularly this left bruise here?
There's not a specific description of it, but there's a general description that there are bruises in the oral cavity and on the tongue.
Okay, and this diagram, does it match what the photographs of the tongue show?
Yeah, that tongue pick always
sort of. That
like
is, everything here isn't exact, and it gives us. It's not exact. However, it does omit an important bruise that's on the photographs that's not described or listed, which is the symmetrical bruise on the right side, which is not as prominent. So that bruise on the outside, which later became important, is not listed or specifically described in the autopsy report, but is present on the photographs.
Okay, and the reason you take photographs is so that you do a lot of autopsies, you can look back, you can see what you saw originally, correct?
Oh yes, and the photographs are more, if they come out properly, are more accurate depiction of actually what the findings were. So the photographs will include things even that at the time of the autopsy we may not think is important, we may not include it for some reason or other, but the photograph documents everything that's there and permits further analysis as more information comes in and as other things may become important that we didn't think might be important at the time of the autopsy.
So you don't find any fault in the way that Dr. Pena did this diagram because he had photographs to show the area without
In general, yeah, that's true, yes. The photographs can't be exact, the diagrams can't be exact as a photograph.
Okay, and Mr. Jackson was asking you some questions about this. Why didn't you, when you got the autopsy report, call Dr. Pena and tell him that, I looked at the photographs and I saw your diagram, and it's not exact. There's some differences between your diagram and these photographs that were taken at the autopsy. Why didn't you call him up and chastise
Two
him?
reasons. One, I received the autopsy report over a year later. Secondly, it wasn't an issue. The bruises on the tongue weren't an issue at that time. It hadn't been raised as an issue. And thirdly, I'd been advised as not to communicate directly with Dr. Pena.
Okay. Now, by Dr. Pena's staff or something?
Well, when Dr. Lakshmanan made the arrangements for me to come down to the autopsy room, part of the arrangements was that I wouldn't take my own separate photographs and that I wouldn't talk too much to Dr. Pena. We talked a little bit, but not much. And I didn't want to be in the position in any way of trying to influence Dr. Pena. We both were there to make our independent observations.
Okay, and when you met with Dr. Pena, when you went to look at the slides with Dr. DeMeo, you didn't talk to him about the case either on that occasion?
No, he was very courteous and showed us all the microscopic slides, but there was not conversation in any way for either side to be in a position of trying to influence the other.
Okay, and that was the event where he very nicely didn't invite me in to talk with him.
Lawyers aren't considered in high regard in medical exam offices.
Okay. I'm sure that's not the only place.
God, it wasn't even from the question, you can get rid of one word forever, purge or moist. Moist takes it. My Lord, 84 to 16% after 19 votes. Wasn't even close.
Doctor, I want to show you two photographs again. If you could, if we could put up Exhibit D to the 7th, can we put that photograph? We
so
talked
bad
a little bit about this on
moist is
Directed.
here.
I'm going to get to the
Probably right
second
now, as I'm
photograph of a
saying.
similar nature in a minute.
On that note, it's actually a good time to take
Zero
a
viewers.
break.
It's like, he said it too many times.
Council want to address me when the jury has left. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition will be in recess for 15 minutes.
That's
Thank
been a
you.
good one. Puss.
All right, the jurors and the audience have left. Mr. Brennan?
I just wanted the record to be unambiguous that I am withdrawing the thumb on the scale. But, well, I mean, it was
Jesus Christ. He's going back. He wants to dig his grave even further.
intended metaphorically. It sounded a lot more personal in reflection.
Lord's praying to God he doesn't bring it back up again.
Thank you.
It's really, but in that regard, and only I told you I was going to look for the page reference,
Yes.
and let me give you the references. And by the way, you were present. I couldn't recall whether you were here during that argument. I started out because I wanted to hear from Mr. Plord. This is on volume 56, page 9607. And this is Mr. Plord. I asked him
Bring in the receipts.
for his explanation. Mr. Plord, from line 9, the first time I learned about this opinion or interpretation of the physical findings was Sunday, as Dr. Bodden testified. I discussed it with, to the extent I could, other counsel, not including Mr. Cutler, of course, nor Miss Linda Kenny Bodden because of her physical illness. Then it goes on to page 9616, and actually starts at 9615, and Mr. Plord's indicating bottom of 9615. Now, I'd say as of last night, well, I'm going to go forward with it. Now, typically, I would talk to counsel about it, and I didn't have time to do that. The court, well, wait a second. You just told me just a moment ago that you had discussed it. You discussed this issue with other counsel. Now, the transcript indicates Mr. Rosen is talking. It's not. It's Mr. Plord. Well, I told them I was going to do it basically last night, this morning, but I didn't really discuss the details because frankly, they don't have it would take me so long, I would still be talking to them, not be here in court. So that's the basis of saying he discussed it with counsel. You know what? We need to move past it. It's not important. Mr. Brunon asked me for the basis why I said other counsel. There's the basis. I accept what you're telling me. Let's move on.
Your Honor, I just wanted to say, I remember exactly what I was talking about. I said that there was another explanation for the blood in the lungs that I needed to investigate and go forward with. And again, I'm not suggesting that I'm just going to leave it at, I didn't think it was discoverable. I've told that to the court. I'm not quibbling with the court's ruling, but I didn't really tell these gentlemen what was really.
It doesn't affect the court's ruling. It explains my remark about other counsel. Okay, you had another issue. Mr. Rosen.
15 seconds, Your Honor.
Okay.
It's been brought to my attention that...
For the love of fucking God, Rosen is that kid in class that when it's ready to go, he'd be like, excuse me, you forgot to assign homework.
Some of the individuals who are covering the trial have directed some derogatory comments towards Mrs. Spector. And the family's asked me to bring this to the court's attention. The court can handle it any way it seems fit. But it just seems to me, you used a phrase a moment ago, we got to get beyond this. And I think there's just no room for that in this situation.
I think I handled it. I wasn't told what the nature of the comments was. I was simply told that people were expressing their opinions where the jurors could overhear it, and that's why I made the admonition I did, so I think I have dealt with it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's anything else you want, you let me know. All right, we're in recess.
Let's see where we're going here. Part 10 with Baden. 49 minutes. Let's do another one. Good Lord. Is there a part 11? Jeez. Insanity. Well, let's take just a second here because I just now got hit through the old, I think the Venmo, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Venmo machine. Appreciate that. And I'll also pop that up there just real quick so people can see it. Yeah, Kathy coming through with a $10 holler through the Venmo machine. Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate that. Hell yes. And I get you on the wheel. And she said Gypsy. And anybody that does not know, yes, Gypsy, my dog, is the reason for this entire channel. Probably still trucking forth and being amazing and getting to grow into what it's become, actually. Because there's been different eras of this channel. And it's at the current era that I'm most proud and happy with because it's a bunch of awesome folks that come in all the time, no matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. They come in, show love, hang out, and we have a good time. And we've built something really cool. And I'm about to plug something else here in a second. Let me do a wheel count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, 4 more people till we get a wheel spin. Anybody new in here? I've seen a couple of new names. We have a physical wheel that you can get on, and once we get 12 names, we give away different things. Sometimes it's a t-shirt. Right now, I just got these really sweet sticker packs. Dandy Savage sticker, Partner in Crime sticker. I got a Murder Church sticker in there as well. And hell, I may also throw in, because I got a shit ton of these, a Murder Church magnet as well. Could get that thing to stick on a fridge or something cool. So yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate the shit out of that. Always keeping it moving. And there's no limit to how many times you can get on the wheel. So Kathy is on this wheel multiple times, and she might be taking the first sticker packet. And yeah, also going to be throwing in the magnet. But also, new folks, we do a book club, and that's a reason to maybe join up and become a member here through the YouTube system. If you do become a member here, Tuesday nights we have members-only streams immediately after Murder Church, no matter what I'm doing. Here recently I've been doing a lot of Ted Bundy type of stuff, because on the book club, we're reading The Stranger Beside Me, which is a book by Ann Rule, someone that knew and worked with Ted Bundy at a crisis call center in 1972, presumably before the murders started. I think there's some debate on when maybe he could have done his first murders, but that we really know of, and that he even would admit later on. But yes, really good stuff here in the Buzz Nation. I appreciate everyone for coming through. Let's keep on rocking and rolling, and we're going to keep moving. We got about 50 more minutes with Baden, and that might not even be the end, but that might take us to the end of Murder Church here. We'll see what it looks like. But one thing I also want to say, on Sunday nights, one thing that I've been doing every Sunday night, I started doing it at 8, but I think I've moved it up to 6. So 6 p.m. Eastern Time, every Sunday night, tonight, I have another channel. It's called Wrestle Plunge. I stream old wrestling. Right now we're doing some Memphis from 1989. It's kind of fun to watch, and I bullshit, and we have a good time in there. So yeah, come check us out over there as well if that's something you think you would enjoy. But yeah, let's keep rocking and rolling. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Appreciate it.
Court is again in session.
All right, back on the record. All parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present as heretofore. You may resume.
Gypsy, that's Gypsy right there.
Dr. Bodden, we have some exhibits, I believe C6 is our first one, and we looked at this briefly. I don't want to spend very much time on it right now, but I want to follow up on the bruise and the photographs of the bruise as it relates to the diagram that was done by Dr. Pena. And essentially, the exhibit
yeah, I do have an extra camera here. Maybe I can try to figure something out. I don't. Also, like, I mean, here's the thing. She always comes down here and hangs out anyways beside me over here in this other room. But I'd wish that she wouldn't, because she's having a tough time with the stairs, and her legs are starting to not want to do exactly what they need to do. She's always made it, but now she has like a little bit of an anticipation moment beforehand. But yeah, let me see what's going on still, because literally if I'm here Sunday morning, she doesn't come down. Like she chills up there in the bed, but in the evening she likes to come down and hang out next door here. Just watch my back. All right. I can't believe we are still Dr. Bodden.
We could have this on the screen. Dr. Bodden, the marks that you thought were bruises that weren't on the diagram, we could, having technical difficulties here, I apologize.
This was the witness that never ends. He just goes on and on, my friends. Dr. Bodden will be here until the end of time, and so will we with Phil Spector, because this is actually hell. We are actually in hell.
If we could have this area here highlighted first. These are the marks that you're talking about that you feel were characteristic of some type of collision with the tongue and the tooth caused by the blast effect of the gun. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be an imprint of the upper molar tooth upon which it impacted.
Okay. And up at the top, they're bruising all along the back of the tooth, where the back of the tongue somehow collides with the hard palate?
Yeah, the hard palate, which we feel with our tongue, ends toward the back of the tongue, and when gases go in the mouth, it can elevate the tongue and impact it against the back of the hard palate. The hard palate is bone, and cause, we don't see them here, but bruises that were up here where you can see better in another photograph.
And also diagrammed by Dr. Pena. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did Dr. Pena discuss in detail all the different bruises on the tongue, or did he just say that there were contusions on the tongue?
Just general contusions on the tongue.
Okay. Now, looking at this stellite wound here in the corner, which is right in the center where this, what do we call that? I'd like to highlight this right here, real tight, as large as we can. Perfect, right there. Thank you, Jennifer. This particular lesion is actually, breaks the skin here, In the middle, the skin is not broken apart. Is that correct?
Well, there's a little bit of a bridge here, like an H, a letter H. Yes.
Okay, now the bullet would have been going from down to up in this direction. Is that correct?
Yeah, from front to back, yes, down to up in this diagram, in this photograph, yes.
So these lesions here, these breaks in the tongue surface, weren't really caused by the bullet necessarily, were they?
No, it may have been the top of the tongue grazed by the bullet so that it tore the skin a little bit, but then it was expanded by the expanding gases.
In other words, this is a break in the tongue surface and the skin all up and down here. Is that true?
That's right. Part of it may have been started by the bullet graze, and then it was expanded as the gases went into and underneath into the tissues.
Brooklyn, thanks for the
Underneath
share.
this is a lot of bruising too, is that correct?
There'd be hemorrhage around the tongue, around those areas.
Appreciate that,
yes.
everybody.
And when you say
Strychnine?
hemorrhage, what are you talking about?
Morning.
That is blood coming out of disrupted capillaries.
Strychnine's a OOOG. Been around these parts a long ass time. Jay Money popping in the door also. What's up, Jay?
There aren't any
Jay comes through and hangs out on a wrestling stream now.
major blood vessels here, the little capillaries, and as they are disrupted by the tearing in the muscle of the tongue, tongue's a muscle, then the blood comes out of it, and especially as the heart is beating, so but blood is pumped out.
I think it's going to come a day I'm going to be like, oh, we're getting real close. There's like 10 videos left. I'm going to look and it's going to be, I've misread it. I've misseen it. What I saw didn't actually happen, like one of those horror movies, and it's going to be like, there's actually over 300 videos. And then when we reach that, there's actually over 400 videos. And then when we reach that, there's actually 500 videos. And then when we reach that, there's actually 600 videos. And then when we reach that, 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 it's never gonna stop.
Okay, and there are some little teeny lesions that are on the tongue, different areas of the tongue and around the mouth, and these are the little lesions that get made when the unburnt particles burn and hit and so forth?
Burned and unburned particles coming out of the muzzle of the weapon can impact and cause slight pinpoint bruises in that area and other places in the mouth.
And little teeny burns, actually, just real...
Some are burns and some are just impacts of unburned material.
Okay, and so these are all characteristic type of injuries when you have a close proximity inside the mouth gunshot wound. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now I want to move to a more detailed picture, and again, I apologize for the nature of these photographs. They're very graphic, but the next one, and I would like to have just the portion C7, or maybe it's D7. C7. And if we can have just this portion here highlighted. Very good. Now, this is the same lesion here that's in the center, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, shows the different breakage a little better, but it shows the 3 marks here. Is that true?
Well, more than 3, but shows little abrasions where you pointed, yes.
Okay, and on the right, this is the bruise that was diagrammed on the right side as we're looking at it by Dr. Pena. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you see in here, which is sort of kind of across from the other 3 marks that you see on the tongue that's significant, if anything?
I think in looking at the bruising, and I think the bruising may have shown better because it's right at the edge of the photograph of the tongue, might show better in the previous photograph on the right. Mm-hmm. There's hemorrhage and there are little areas of pinpoint impacts, as on here, on the right side. This is the right side of the tongue, and this is the left side of the tongue. And in the bruising, one can see little impact abrasions, again, caused by the tongue forcefully moving up against the left molars.
Okay.
1 molar.
Now, is there anything unusual about these types of injuries, the tongue hitting the teeth, things of that nature?
No.
Okay. Was this of interest at the autopsy where you really wanted to look at where exactly the bruising was on the tongue?
Well, at the time of the autopsy, it appeared to be multiple injuries in the oral cavity caused by the eruption of the gases and the impacts with burnt and unburnt powder granules, and with the tongue moving against the hard palate, which was fractured. The hard palate was fractured by the gases in the tongue impacting against it. So this seemed to be a good example of an intraoral gunshot wound, which was the real focus of that autopsy. Was it outside the mouth or inside the mouth? And that this seemed to answer that question.
Okay.
Showing HBO.
While you're
Pretty freaking
talking
cool.
about, while we're talking about this inside the mouth, outside the mouth, that was, if I understand your testimony, Dr. Bodden, with reference to my questions and also Mr. Jackson's questions, is that there's something characteristic about it being inside the mouth that's of a concern. What if it's outside the mouth, 3, 6, 18 inches? What's characteristic about that?
Yeah. If a person dies from a gunshot wound outside of the mouth, or a few inches from the lips, a few inches from the face, any head injury, the immediate impression would be that it's a homicide that was fired by another person. When a individual fires a weapon, invariably the muzzle is touching the skin or inside the mouth. If it's outside the mouth, outside the face, for even a few inches, that's most likely 90%, 95% that it's fired by another person. If it's more than 2 feet away, then it's 99.9% that it's fired by another person. So that there are patterns of injury that guide medical examiners as we do our investigations. We still look for more information, but that's the basis why the intraorals, just by experience, turn out to be self-inflicted.
Now, Exhibit 00, we could look at that. That's another diagram. If we could highlight the left-hand corner of that on Exhibit 00. Yeah, the bottom left-hand corner, thank you. This diagram shows what, Dr. Bodden?
This is Dr. Pena's drawing about the time of the autopsy of the hard palate. These are the upper teeth in diagrammatic form, and this is to show the fracture that was present on the left side of the mouth, the left side here of the upper part of the hard palate of the mouth, which was caused by the gases and the impact of the tongue. Because even though tongues are muscle and soft, the forces generated contribute to the tongue forces on the hard palate, which is thin. The facial bones are largely thin bones, except for the jawbone. And so it's not uncommon for
imagine being a juror absorbing this much
for the hard
information
palate
from
to break,
one
to
witness?
fracture.
Is that
Okay.
not
And
insane
that's what
to
happened
me?
in this case.
That's what happened here. It's the
everyone
left
else
side
like that?
L,
Like,
and right
this is
where
wild.
probably had a little bit more impact than on the right side.
Okay. And so, did the gun strike the hard palate?
It could have, but it needn't have. It could have struck the hard palate. Usually if the sight had struck the hard palate, there'd be some localized defect that's bigger than a fracture line. The nature of the fracture line, as we saw it at the autopsy table, was more of gases and tongue striking than of a portion of the barrel of the sight striking, which have left a defect.
I would like to know how the second trial went to get the guilty verdict compared
Now,
to this
Dr.
one.
Bodden, you were
did
asked a number of questions about the type of work you do, dealing with
like the jury is
lawyers, things of that nature.
Beat over the head with information.
Do
And not
people
that you don't need that in a trial, especially a murder trial, but it's just so much of the same thing over and over. Like we've had Dr. Bodden talk about the injuries inside of the mouth. We get his opinion at the end of the day too, that what he thinks happened. Like,
hire you,
That's
whether
just-
it's for the prosecution
Jesus.
or for the defense, do you always give opinions that favor their position or their client's position, whatever the case may be?
Objection, that's irrelevant. what happens in other cases.
Actually, it's been asked and answered. It's been
And
raised
it's been
before.
asked and answered.
In that case, no one will ever accuse you of not being quick. Sustain.
That's a quote for Alan Jackson right there. No one will ever accuse him of not being quick, and ain't that the truth?
What usually happens if a client that hires you disagrees with your opinions after you've reviewed materials and things of that nature?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Same ruling. He's testified to it.
Okay. You were asked a number of questions about your compensation in this case. When you're hired by third parties, whatever the case may be, is your compensation rate any different than this case?
Objection, that's been asked and answered as well.
He's testified to that. Sustain. And I believe actually the answer came out during cross-examination. He answered exactly how his compensation. I know what the answers are. It's been totally. There's nothing new in that. It's not even redirect, if you will, because unless there's some changed answer, if there's something that's going to be different, that's fine. But I have a very distinct memory of these questions and answers.
Doctor, do you ever?
See, even the judge is like, "Is this the Twilight Zone? Is this Groundhog Day with Bill Murray?" Whoa.
You work on a number of cases where you don't charge, is that correct? And I want to ask about sort of the percentage of your time where you work where you don't charge versus cases that you do charge. We didn't.
I'm sorry.
Back into the fucking money thing. How much?
Objection.
Jesus
Overruled. I'll allow that.
fucking Christ.
We talked about the fact that you worked. We talked about the fact that you charge on cases, and you mentioned you did some pro bono work and why you do that. But give us
Look at him. His hands are in his face. Or his face is in his hands. Dear God, free this man. We have went over this shit. We have.
idea. Percentage-wise, I guess is the best way to do it, where you work on cases and you don't even charge, or you work doing forensic work, whether it's on a case or whether it's just doing forensic work, where you don't charge people.
Yeah, I would guess about a fifth of my time, 1 day a week, would be on work that's pro bono and that's not compensated financially.
Okay, and is it always a case, or is it other circumstances? You mentioned one time you went out of the country to go do some work. That wasn't on a case.
It depends on the circumstances. For example,
at
the time of Katrina, I went down.
Still got quite a while here.
I'm
going to see if there's another
didn't have any doctors working there, and worked for about 3 weeks pro bono without any.
Oh shit, Pammy coming through while she's driving. I know she's driving and listening right now. Hopefully, being very safe. But thank you so much coming through with the Cash App. $5 says hanging and driving and listening. Hell yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Hanging and banging.
Hanging and banging, baby. Pammy with the $5 right through the old Cash App. Getting on here for some stickers, a possibility of some stickers. I think we're only 3 away. It's been a great morning here. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it, guys.
Compensation because of the need for a forensic pathologist and the fact they absolutely had no money to pay anybody. I've been asked.
It's been asked. Okay. Sorry, it's been answered at
I
this
think
point.
it has been.
All right, and do you also work on, or spend some of your time working on cases where you don't get remunerated for fees?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and why do you do that, Dr. Point?
Because I think part of a physician's obligation in general, and especially a forensic pathologist, because this is to provide services to people who can't, medical services to people who can't afford it and who wouldn't receive it otherwise. And I think I mentioned I do a lot of work with the innocence projects.
That's irrelevant.
Well, he's testified and he's answered that, and now we'll move forward.
Okay, all right. And is there any difference in the way that you do, anything you do differently in these pro bono cases, or a case that you would work for a district attorney's office or work for somebody who's charged with a crime? I mean, do you do anything different as far as the types of materials that you do, the type of work that you do?
No, no.
Dr. Bodden, with reference to this particular case, Mr. Jackson asked you just a few questions about a diaper and clots and so forth, or blood on a diaper. What was your understanding of what that diaper, what its significance to this case was, if any?
Well, when I viewed the information available and the photographs, my opinion was that the diaper was wetted, made wet by Mr. Spector, and the face was swabbed with it. It was an attempt to clean up the face or see what's going on, and that the blood and mucus and material on the diaper was on top of the wetness. It was still there when we looked at it in the sheriff's department. So just my opinion was it was used wet to wipe the face of Miss Clarkson.
Okay. Now, did that tell you who was holding the gun at the time that it was fired? Did that, the evidence of the...
No, no.
Okay. The gunshot residue, there were questions asked about that subject. Does the amount and distribution of the gunshot residue have anything to do with how you interpret, who was holding the gun, who was not holding the gun?
Yes, in a general way, yes.
Okay, explain the amount and distribution to the jury in that general way that you've just stated. In other words, what is it about?
In general, the more gunshot residues on hands indicate closer distance from the discharge than hands which would have less gunshot residues, in general.
Okay. Is that a conclusive thing? If you just looked at the gunshot residue distribution, can you really make a decision on that?
No, because then there are other factors. Did anybody wipe hands off? Did anybody wash their hands? For example, did the living person wash their hands compared to the dead person who couldn't? But that's why the distribution on the clothing becomes very important. Shirts, sleeves of shirts, sleeves of jackets, the clothing that's on the body or on the other person present become important because that's harder to wash away. The hands could be washed to diminish the amount of gunshot residues, but not the clothing.
Okay. Now, you were aware, or you read reports, reviewed materials regarding Ms. Clarkson's gunshot residue test. I think you mentioned that Ms. Lintamoot took it. And did you develop an understanding as to how it was evaluated, whether it was tested on the outside, the inside, or how it was done?
Well, there are ways to test the gunshot residues on hands to distinguish what's on the back of the hands from the palm of the hands, with the idea that if somebody's holding a gun in a palm, that palm, the grip would interpose, and the palm of the hand would not have gunshot residues on it if the individual was holding something. But in order to do that, one has to take four stickies from each palm and each dorsum. And with Ms. Clarkson, one sticky was taken of the left hand palm and back, and one of the right hand palm and back. And that showed considerable gunshot residues, but it doesn't distinguish whether there was one of the palms was protected and free of gunshot residues.
In other words, there was a void. That just simply was collected in a way where you couldn't answer that question, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the question that you would want to have answered is there a void or an area which suggests a gun was being held by someone and or being held in a particular way?
The idea being that if there's a gun in the hand, there would be a void of gunshot residues in that palm.
Okay. Now, Mr.
That isn't commonly done now for various reasons, but that's what would happen.
Okay. So you don't find any particular, you'd like to know that, but you don't find any fault or
Well, I think the way it's done in L.A. is one can tell whether the hands were in the area of a gun discharge, but it doesn't tell you whether the hands were holding a gun.
Okay. Now,
the way it's done, that is palm and back mixed together.
okay, now let's talk about the relative distribution of the gunshot residue. Your understanding was that a gunshot residue test was done on Mr. Spector's hands also, is that true?
Yes.
And that one specific and one non-specific particle were found on his hands?
Yeah, which would normally be called a negative.
Okay, and Mr. Jackson has talked about the possibility of Mr. Spector's hands being washed, and that's something you always have to consider, is that scenario.
One has to consider washing of hands, one has to consider rubbing of hands against the clothing and things if somebody's handcuffed. So all those have to be considered, yes.
Okay. He was, you read that he was handcuffed in the area where the gun went off, correct?
Yes,
okay.
But it was some time later, after the discharge.
Okay. And you'd have to also consider whether or not he put his hands in his pockets, that type of thing, and rubbed off gunshot.
There was evidence that he did put his hand in at least one pocket.
Okay. And so did you consider anything about his clothing and gunshot residue? In other words, any distribution patterns? Let's say Mr. Spector had on his right sleeve, if he had some soot from a gunshot residue on his right hand, would that have been significant?
Yes.
Why would that be the case?
Because one can't easily rub off gunshot residues from clothing without washing the clothing, and which would be apparent. So the distribution of gunshot residues on clothing, pants, other parts of the body would be of value, especially if there's been an interval in which the individual could have cleaned one's hands.
What do you mean interval? You talking about hours?
There were half an hour or so when I understand Mr. Spector was in the house before the police arrived.
Okay, so if we presume that somebody shoots a gun, would it be unusual to find gunshot residue on a sleeve such as Mr. Spector's sleeve here?
Yes, it would be usual to find gunshot residues on the sleeves, yes, and on the forearm portion of the jacket.
Okay. And so did that information regarding that, did that factor into your overall evaluation of this case?
Yes.
Along with the blood, along with the tissue, et cetera?
Yes.
Now, do you also consider the nature of the gun and whether it emits gunshot residue, things of that? In other words, whether it's a gun that has a particular emission of gunshot residues?
Yes, that's also taken into consideration.
Some guns emit more than others for a variety of reasons, is that true?
Yes.
Now, when somebody is shot in the mouth and there's blood and so forth that comes out after the shooting event occurs, does it take a particular time before it starts to clot?
Well, material in the mouth, coming out of the mouth, can be clotted as it, apparently clotted as it comes out, because the mouth is not pure blood. It's mixed with mucus, saliva, in this instance, spinal fluid, so that there could be bloody congealed material that comes out that looks like blood. That's a mixture of blood and other, the usual fluids that are in the mouth. And that can clot very quickly. It can come out just as when we sneeze, we have clotted material come out of the nose. With a gunshot wound, that clotted material would be bloody.
Now, the wound that was suffered by Miss Clarkson, as far as the bullet path and the blood that would come out, what areas of the body was the blood coming from? In other words, it had to leak out of some particular area. Is that true?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Where was the blood coming from? If you could explain to the members of the jury the nature of the wound and how the blood would come out.
At the time of the discharge of the weapon?
And afterwards. There appeared to be in the photographs a lot of blood on the right side of her body, down her coat, that type of thing. And how did that happen?
That happens because when the bullet itself mechanically tears the back of the mouth, it exposes and opens up small blood vessels, mostly capillaries, but a little bit of small veins and small arteries. And the expansion of the gases in the mouth stretch the inside of the mouth and cause hemorrhage and damage to small blood vessels, so that the blood coming out of the mouth is coming from all the disrupted blood vessels that are in the mouth and which the heart keeps pumping. So the heart is constantly pumping at that stage. And there's also saliva and other materials that mix into it that are part of the flow of blood as her head lays on her shoulder.
Okay, and is there any way to look at the way the blood comes out, as you've just described, and tell or come to a conclusion based upon your education experience as a medical examiner as to where the head was, what direction it was when the shot was fired, whether it was in the direction where the blood was, whether it was straight, whether it was pointed in another direction, up, down, or anything like that?
Certain things can be determined. That is, there might be a void area where the chin lays against the shoulder area, so that blood can get into that void space. There's a directionality to the blood that comes out right away. We saw with those what I call bowling pin things that other people call different things. So one can determine, this is part of the expertise of the blood spatter experts, one can tell different ways in which blood distributed on the body and on the clothing, whether by direct coming out of the mouth, whether by flowing afterwards, whether there was something in the way at the time that the blood was flowing.
Dr. Bond, I want to show you a picture here. This is Exhibit T. I'm going to put up. Here it looks like the head is over to the left. The blood is over to the right, at least the predominant blood.
Yes.
Okay, and is there any way to tell which direction her head was in, Ms. Clarkson's head was in, when the shot was fired?
Well, the direction of the head was in would encompass a lot of things, including where the teeth went. So the most important thing, it would be, one of the important things, would be that dental fragments went straight ahead toward the staircase area. There was a flow of blood on the right side, meant the head had to be over on the right side immediately thereafter.
Okay.
And then what we're looking at is after whatever movements she made after being shot, whatever was done, you know, there's taser stuff here. When the police, the EMS people come in, they have to do certain things to check the body. And so that by the time the medical examiner gets there, there may be a number of changes as to, from the position that the head was in at the immediate time of discharge of the weapon.
Okay, I want to focus in on that term that you just used, the immediately thereafter, the blood started flowing to the right. Does that mean that the head was to the right when the shot was fired, in a direction away from the direction where the teeth were?
No.
Okay.
By the way, I would object to that question as assuming facts, not in evidence, that the head was in a direction away from the direction of the teeth.
I think it was assuming it's a hypothetical, it's based on possibilities. That's my understanding.
Right.
All right, the objection's overruled, yeah.
whether it was left or right, away from the direction of where the teeth were, you don't believe that that would be the direction the head was in when the shot was fired. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, is there any way to tell what, if somebody is seated, whether the head is down or up, or by the bullet path or anything such as that?
The bullet path does tell you the relative position between the barrel of the weapon and the muzzle and the head. It doesn't tell you what position the head is in. For example, if this were the barrel of a weapon, and it goes in this direction, if I'm seated like this, it's going horizontal. Any of those positions would
on the pin, sir.
be the same bullet track in the mouth. If somebody were underneath me and shooting upwards, it would still have the same position in the back of my mouth. So what the autopsy tells us, the autopsy, is the relative position between the weapon and the head, back straight in this case. It doesn't tell you whether the head is up or down or whatever, as long as the gun is in that position.
Okay. Now, the teeth that get blown out, or the prosthetic teeth that get blown out, they got those pieces of prosthetic teeth were blown out, and some were found near the wall of the stairs, some were found on the stairs. And was there also a little particle of natural tooth or something that was found on the slip dress?
Yes.
Okay. Is that consistent with Ms. Clarkson being seated in the chair in some way holding the gun?
It would be so consistent, yes.
Okay. If I could have a minute, Your Honor.
All right.
I think I'm...
Just a minute now.
Mr. Jackson's epiphany is ready. I think I'm done with my questions.
This is gun country.
All right. Thank you. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Alan Jackson.
Recross. Pardon.
There you go. I'll take either one.
All right.
Dr. Bodden, as I look at my watch, unfortunately, I don't think there's any way I can try in 6 or 7 minutes. You indicated yesterday that the physical evidence does not comport, and this is under examination by Mr. Plord, the physical evidence does not comport to any position where the defendant could have fired the weapon with regard to the pattern that you see on the jacket. Was that your testimony yesterday?
I don't think I said any position, but the various positions that were raised, that he couldn't have been right in front of Lana Clarkson, for example.
Okay.
One can create a position that he's in that would comport to some of the findings.
Okay. As a matter of fact,
but not all the findings.
When Dr. Bodden, I think you and several other members of the defense team, some experts and some lawyers, including your wife and Mr. Plord, I think Mr. Bruce.
Oh, Bonnie coming through here. Bonnie wants to get on the wheel this morning. Hell yeah, Bonnie. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much. $2 holla coming through here. Let me get you on here real quick and give you a little love. Let me see here. Where are we at? How close did we get this morning? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Only 2 donations away from getting a wheel spin from some loot in the Buzz Nation. Thank you so much, Bonnie. I appreciate it.
Brunon, I think I saw his mug in one of these pictures too. Several individuals from the defense team were at the crime lab. In fact, you did take a couple of pictures of a mannequin with Mr. Spector's jacket on the mannequin that did in fact comport with the physical findings on the jacket itself, correct?
Well, number one, I didn't take any pictures, but the pictures were taken.
Okay.
And I don't recall that.
Okay. Your Honor, People's 192, that's next in order.
Yes. Let me just double check. Yes, 192 is correct.
192, is that right?
Yeah, it is right.
This is in fact, a photograph of the mannequin. This is a little bit different than the photograph I showed you earlier. The mannequin has been moved to the right of Dr. DeMaio, who's seated in the position of the model, correct?
Yes.
All right, and in fact, this is a little bit washed out, but...
Could I, it'd be easier for me if I could see the actual
Absolutely,
print.
absolutely. May I?
Yes.
This may be a little sharper picture.
Thank you.
In fact, in this photograph, as compared to the one that we showed the jurors yesterday, the model has been moved, the mannequin has been moved to the right of Dr. DeMaio, correct?
Yes.
Now, his head still appears to be...
Oops. The model has been moved to the left of Dr. DeMaio, I think.
The mannequin has been moved to the right of Dr. DeMaio.
Oh, yes.
Okay. We got our left and right. If you need me to throw you a ball, catch it with your right hand. That's how I always remember, right from left. All right, Doc. In fact, as the model is moved to the right, I'm saying model, and I apologize. Let me take a deep breath. As the mannequin is moved to the right of Dr. DeMaio, who's sitting in the chair.
Yes.
And the mannequin is leaned over just a hair, leaned over to the mannequin's left.
Yes.
That, in fact, exposes which side of the jacket to Dr. DeMaio's face if you were to turn Dr. DeMaio's head just slightly right.
If Dr. DeMaio's face would turn to the right, it could expose the left side of the jacket.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Susan. With regard to the teeth, I guess this goes almost without saying that Judge Fiddler has taken issue with me saying that, because if it goes without saying, why am I saying it, right? But I want to make sure that we make this point. When the teeth were shattered and fractured out of the mouth, by whatever mechanism, barrel of the gun, the rear sight, blunt force trauma, gases, whatever we attribute the mechanism to, as the teeth are shattered, you indicated that the lips suffered some damage because there's, is it not stippling? What's the word I'm looking for?
Well, Dr. Pena calls it pseudo-stippling.
Pseudo-stippling.
There are little abrasions on the lips that he describes in the autopsy. You've seen the photos.
And those don't go perfectly straight. When they're shattered, I mean, there's going to be an arc of kind of dissemination of materials,
The
correct?
gases encompass the entire mouth.
Okay.
So.
And in fact, if one of those teeth takes a little bit different trajectory, if something is standing just to the right, if something is blocking that trajectory, you might expect that tooth fragment to bounce off of that item, that object, and maybe land back on Lana Clarkson's torso area, correct? That would be an explanation for that.
That's a possibility.
Okay. With regard to the tape lift, I want to talk to you real quick about the tape lift. Did you actually watch Dr. Harold's testimony when she testified in this case?
No, I did not.
Your wife actually was asking her a few questions. She was the one that was taking her on cross-examination. She, your wife, was taking Dr. Harold on cross-examination.
I'm going to object to Mr. Jackson continuing to say his wife. She is not serving his wife in this capacity. She is serving as one of the defense team.
Well, that's
excuse me, and he should please address her as Miss Linda Kinney Bodden, and as he has always been doing with every other witness.
That is up for the jury to decide what capacity she's here.
The bottom line is...
He'll have arguments.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Thank you. Her status isn't important in the question, so you can just indicate it. If you want to say that Mrs. Bodden was questioning, the fact that it's in the question is not important.
Fine. Thank you. Mrs. Bodden was taking the witness on cross-examination. Were you aware of that, Dr. Bodden?
Yes.
All right. And she asked a couple of questions about that note that you and Mr. Plord were discussing, the one in parentheses, the parenthetical with the question mark. Did you see that portion of the testimony, or were you aware of that portion of Dr. Harold's testimony?
I believe I don't have it here, but I believe I read through her testimony at some point, yes.
Were you aware that she said during her testimony with regard to that parenthetical, quote, I didn't say I thought it was part of the fingernail polish. By putting that question the way I made that notation in parens with the question mark, that is a way that I take notes that say go back to that possible idea. So I'm not saying, how do I explain this? I'm not saying it's possible fingernail polish. Were you aware that that was her testimony?
Yes, I saw that, but she didn't test it. That's what I was tested. She didn't do any further tests on it, as I understand.
But in fact, she was not saying, I mean, not so that we don't leave anybody with a misimpression, Dr. Harold was not saying that thing on the tape lift was part of fingernail polish. You're aware of that?
Well, she was backing off it a little bit. I had it part of white opaque fragment question, part of fingernail polish, and that's what I think it should look like.
Well, Dr. Bodden, your impression of who's backing off things and who's not is not really my question. My question is, are you aware of her testimony under oath when she was questioned about that parenthetical, and she indicated, I was not saying that it was part of the fingernail or fingernail polish. Are you aware of that?
She did not conclude that. That's correct.
All right. On that note, we will take our break till 1:30. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition, 1:30 this afternoon. Thank you. You want to address? All right, we'll wait. Thank you. You sit down.
Your Honor, there are two issues.
Just a second. The jurors and the alternates have left. Yes.
Mr. Jackson's going to address one. All I want to do is alert the court that, in my view, we need maybe 10 minutes with the court at the end of the day, so we don't interrupt the jurors.
Thank you.
Either in chambers or out here, but the court may want to get involved in this.
Okay. Well, I only go in chambers if there's some reason to. I'd prefer to do it in open court. If you think that it's a possibility we shouldn't, then you can.
Well, I'll let the defense team, Mr. Rosen knows what I'm discussing.
It's about.
Did you think it should be in chambers?
I do.
All right. We'll go into chambers then. Okay. Number two.
On another note that we don't have to go in chambers on, Your Honor, the defense brought up through Dr. Bodden's testimony a question about the testing of the clothing of Mr. Spector. As a matter of fact, I think Mr. Plord was holding Mr. Spector's hand up and talking about the clothing and where the sleeve would be and this demonstrative evidence, et cetera, and the fact that that clothing was not tested. There's a reason that clothing wasn't tested, and the defense well knows what that reason is. It's been notated, it's been discussed in other hearings and at the grand jury, et cetera. The reason his clothes were not tested is because Mr. Spector chose to live in a house filled with, I think, more than a dozen guns. I've lost count now. I think it's either 12 or 13. That is the reason why his clothes weren't tested. If he had a house cat, the house cat would come back positive for GSR. There's no reason to test the clothing for GSR. The only reasonable effort with regard to GSR in this particular case, given what was found in Mr. Spector's house, was to test the hands of the victim and the hands of Mr. Spector. That's why it was done this way. The jurors are left with the impression that there was some incompetence or oversight on the part of the sheriff's crime lab for not testing his clothes. There's a good reason for it, and I think they've just opened the door to that reason. Now, I'm not going to suggest, Judge, that we walk in here and display all 12 guns that were owned by Mr. Spector and all the holsters and all the ammunition and all that stuff. However, I do believe that we should be able to explain the conduct of the criminalist in this particular case and explain that there were a dozen guns found in his house. They were all over the house, including a lot of them in the bedroom where the jacket was actually taken off and on the floor. You'd expect GSR all over everything in the house, especially in that bedroom.
I know we raised the subject before.
It has been raised
We might have done it at the bench, we might have done it on court, but that possibility was raised depending upon what the examination was of certain witnesses.
Correct.
Mr. Plord?
I think they did do some testing, or they looked at the sleeves of the garment, and that is the appropriate thing to do. And there's testimony regarding that. I'm trying to remember the details of it. You know, whether there's a little unburned particle or something burned the sleeve. I mean, they looked at it for that reason, and there was nothing there. It was basically a negative. Testing the whole garment, I agree that given the fact he was in the house at the time is the reason you don't do that, whether he has guns anywhere else. But they did look at the sleeves because they wanted to know whether there was this abundance of material or not. And I can't remember what the testimony was, but I think Dr. Harold said something about that. I don't think it has anything to do with the guns upstairs, the history of the gun, because then you'd have to know whether the coat was on or off at other times. Did he wear it often? That's really neither here nor there. The fact is that they looked at the sleeves. They didn't really come up with anything. The hands is a different issue. All of that, the relative distribution is what it is, and that's what the jury should consider. I'm not suggesting that, in fact, I'm sort of suggesting that they did look at the sleeve areas and they did something, and that helps us. That doesn't hurt us. They did the right thing. Not that they didn't test it, that what they didn't actually come up with anything incriminating.
Mr. Bruno?
Is this a request for the people to be allowed to expand the number of guns recovered from the house?
Yes, it is.
I don't think that that's necessary to transgress that previous ruling. If the explanation of why they didn't do it was because there were other guns in the house, they can limit that. They can have that testimony. It is as persuasive as enumerating them, and it doesn't contradict the court's earlier ruling.
Fine. If you don't have a problem with that, then without getting into specific numbers or anything else, just say there were other guns in the house, and I'll admonish the jury that it's being received for a very limited purpose.
Well, Judge, I mean, to say there's other guns in the house limits us basically to the 4 guns that we have introduced to the jury.
No,
I mean, those are the other guns that Mr. Brunon is talking about, unless we say, and that's literally misguiding them. I want to clear one thing up first, however. Mr. Plord, I'm not sure he understands what was done to the sleeves. The sleeves were never tested for GSR. They were not tested for GSR. There was a sticky disc taken and it was never tested.
I would suggest, and there are problems, and it depends, that's why I talked about the admonition. There's a case, I want to say it's the Cox case, it may not be, that talks about letting other weapons in, but it can be done if there's an independent reason. I would suggest that counsel see if they can arrive at a reasonable stipulation, and if you're close and can't quite agree, perhaps I'll give you some language. But I would suggest that first you try to arrive at a stipulation that gets in what you need and without any undue prejudice to Mr. Spector.
Did I misinterpret? Maybe I misinterpreted Mr. Brunon. Maybe he was saying, in addition to the guns that you've got before you, there were other guns as well found in the house. That I might be able to live with without enumerating the number.
Yeah, the jury already knows about the other guns. I don't have any problem with that.
Do that, and I'll give an admonition with it, and why don't you see if you can arrive at a stipulation?
Sure, we'll see.
By the way, something to think about. It was raised...
I think we should display all the guns. I want to see every gun.
I do want to... Jurors need to get lunch. The caterers need to come in. The question of whether, and Dr. Bodden's still in the back of the audience, I need to ask him a question. I'm going to do it off the stand. Dr. Bodden, are you aware of what your wife has been paid in this case for her services as an attorney?
No, not precisely.
Generally?
It was over $100,000 or $150,000, I believe. But,
okay. Thank you. The reason I asked Dr. Bodden that question is the prosecution wants to go into whether or not they can question Dr. Bodden as to possible bias based on what Mrs. Kenny Bodden is making, and I said I would look into the question because there's some issues with it. It doesn't involve privilege. In the federal system, it wouldn't at all. In California, you have to look at what the question seeks to discover or to show whether it's a privileged area. It's not. I'm quite satisfied that merely the fee, we know who the client is, he's here on trial. My other concern was under 352, if it was some enormous amount that might somehow prejudice the jury against Mr. Spector if he's spending a lot of money on his defense. What I just heard does not concern me under 352, and I'm going to allow the people to inquire into it to show possible bias or prejudice, but I'm also going to admonish the jury as to why the evidence is being received.
On that issue,
yes,
knowing the subject all too well, but the amount of time for the money, that is the real question.
Well, you can argue that. The bottom line, or if you want to somehow figure out a way to do it, the important thing is, and the only reason it's being admitted, it's a legitimate inquiry as to whether there's some bias because of the amount of money that's coming in the household. It's that simple.
We ask permission to come back on redirect and explore that in terms of the time involved.
Well, if he's aware of that. Or through some other witness. All right, it's up to them, and you wanted a legal ruling, you got one. We're in recess. Thank you.
All right. Today was a spicy morning. Good Lord. Oh, wait. I want to see where we're going next. Next. Oh, my God. Part 11, 52 minutes. That's where we're going to start out next time we talk about this. Holy cow, dude. Michael Bodden, Part 11, Video 203. Another hour. My God. What a morning, though. This has been a really good morning. I appreciate everyone for coming through here. Yeah, 150K. I'd see a lot of people in the chat say that seems low. I don't really know. I mean, I know she's like was she a world-renowned lawyer already at this time, or was she already established by doing some pretty cool stuff? I don't know her history, honestly asking. Or did she become established after this? But I don't know that's good or not. I know if someone's being represented by or for Phil Spector, I would expect them to be paid a lot of loot, a lot of money. But also, he's got a fuck ton of lawyers, so I guess he's paying everyone something according to that. But I don't know, man. And she wasn't a part of the second trial, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, everybody, thank you all so much. This morning has been awesome, super fun show. I really appreciate everyone for coming in and hanging out. Again, I'll be back Tuesday, actually tonight too. So a couple of things. Yeah, tonight I will be back for the Wrestle Plunge channel. If no one is already following there, I know there's a couple of new people in here tonight. Let me just put a link in here on Sunday nights, which I drop videos on there, which are actually pretty true crime related, just to be honest. But on Sunday nights, it's pretty much just old school wrestling. I'm showing right now Memphis Wrestling. It's kind of like a local wrestling show that came on in Kentucky, Tennessee. They got into some other places, maybe even in Virginia or West Virginia. But yeah, CWA Memphis Wrestling from 1989. Come through, hang out, we shoot the shit. 6 p.m. tonight, Eastern Time. There's the link for that. Beyond that, where you're going to be heading from this stream is going to be Mo's stream for in the morning, I believe. Mo in the Deep End, who is going to be coming on here Friday night to probably watch a Friday the 13th movie. Friday is Friday the 13th, so that's probably what's going to be going down. I don't even know if she knows that yet. But Mo in the Deep End is going to be coming in. This will be her, she's been on the channel multiple times, but this will be her second Feral Friday. I'm going to be sending you into Mo in the morning. Every morning she does a little bit of a stream doing a variety of things across entertainment, true crime, mostly true crime related. Really, you're going to like it. You're going to enjoy it. Please go in there, show her some love, give her a like, and put in the chat that, or even a comment if that's available, that the Buzz Nation sent you there. So that will be cool as well. And then otherwise, Tuesday night, we'll do Murder Church again. It'll probably be something Ted Bundy related again as we continue to read The Stranger Beside Me in the Buzz Nation Book Club. A lot of really cool stuff happening here on Publicly Buzzed, on Murder Church, and the Buzz Nation, thanks to you amazing people. Factual Eye knows. Mo's amazing. She's one of my favorites to watch, honestly. She's really fun. So you're going to be heading out of there immediately into her stream. When you get there, let her know that the Buzz Nation sent you through. Hell yeah. Thank you all for an amazing morning. Seriously. Come hang out later tonight. Wrestle Plunge, 6 Eastern. Boom. Go tell Mo hey. Boom, 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 boom. Have a great Sunday.
This